Well, we are live from Studio B here on Friday the 28th, the last day of February, and we managed to get live here just at the last minute. We have Andrew McIrvine standing patiently by at his home in London. He's the Secretary General of the International Maxi Association, among many other things. Good to have Andrew with us today. Julia, I trust you are well.
I am.
Any hot tips before we look to see who else is on here, or while we're looking to see?
I was just thinking that if this month had one more day, it would be my mother's 105th birthday.
Well, that sounds old. Good thing you're not that old.
No.
You did lose track of your birthday. You really are 85. I said all along you're 85, and you said, no, I'm only 84. I'm about to turn 80. You're 85, and you're about to turn 86
That's
in,
true.
in 2 weeks' time.
It's got a really compressed year.
And we're going to have a celebration here on the show, I think.
Uh-oh.
Alistair Murray's checking in. Another beautiful day in Mettung. It's another beautiful day in NorCal, says Ed Worley. Warren Schlosser in Brisbane. We're going to go for 2032. Did you get that jet chartered, Julia? Get that jet bought or chartered?
Sure.
Ryman's on in Cape Town. Mueller's on in Miami. Christopher Gillingham is on with Jane in Leamington. The gang is mostly here. Schlosser, Warren likes my shirt. Well, I wore that in honor of Andrew because he had this shirt on in a photo he sent me not too long. Let's bring Andrew in, shall we, Julia, right away?
Absolutely.
Let's bring him right in here at the top of the show. Andrew, welcome to our show for the 28th of Feb, our 9th year. And you've been on, what, a dozen times?
Yeah, I think so.
Mm-hmm.
What's all that stuff?
Your mother, as in the Pirates of Penzance, she would have only been 26.
Yeah, well, that's true. What is this stuff at the top of the screen? Oh, I know what that is.
When I was 6, I had more birthdays than she did, and I never let it down.
Well, I got to get rid of that white strip at the top, Andrew. We'll do that here, but let's carry on. Alan Long is in Turnefi, Belize. Did I pronounce that right? Turnefi? How do you say that, Andrew? Do you know? Turnefi, it looks like.
Couldn't help you there.
Bob Walker in Northern Texas, Greg Phillips on the Gold Coast of Oz, as usual, and Pedro Foiling Sailor. We have today a Pedro's perspective.
Oh, good.
In the last leg, in the C block today. We're delighted to have that. I'm your host, Tom Eamon. Thanks to all of you for joining us, letting us into your computer for the day. And today's show is going to be a cool one, a great one. Happy Friday, and it's the start of the world's biggest party, Julia, so think about that.
Mm-hmm.
It's also a day to celebrate our returning Super FOSI, Andrew, Mr. Dr. McIrvine, who is Secretary General of the IMA and an admiral of the RORC. He's a member of the squadron and a member of the Beach Street Yacht Club.
That's of great import.
And I see Leo, there's a new name, Leo Weary, W-E-R-Y. Welcome, Leo, is checking in from Rio de Janeiro. Got a little bit of segment about Rio today.
Lovely.
Chris Exley is in sunny Miles Salem, Mass. Rick Bannero has contributed to the show as well. Hi-ho, from pre-spring, Connecticut. He says Turnefi is how you pronounce that, Turnefi. He must have been to Belize before. Let's go back to the show notes. You see, we've changed the format a bit to get the show on the road quicker, Julia.
Yes.
Today we could have used the extra 90-second countdown. R.I.P. with a sad note that our founding yacht club, Gestad Yacht Club, and the legendary British yacht broker, founder of Camper Nicholson, George Nicholson, has passed. Well, a little bit about him. And some FOSI focuses, on upcoming guests next Tuesday, Dolly DeVola. And the following Tuesday, Mark Reed will be on. Cool segments, too.
Mm.
And I got a new segment today, Julia, called News in Brief.
But do we want to hear it?
Yeah, we do. It's but the FOSI and you and Andrew are going to have to help us select the cover slide. I've got two options for you, one of which you may shake your finger at, maybe not.
Mm-hmm.
SI News in Brief. We'll premiere that today. Coaching Corner, as usual, John Emmett weighing in today from the esteemed Royal Sydney Yacht Squadron. An AC-38 Cup date, and I have, Commodores, ladies and gentlemen, I have a one here's of a certain significance, I think. I wouldn't bet my life on it. I probably wouldn't bet the ranch on it, but I'm sorry to hear several things that the stars are aligning. An AC-38 Cup Day. Pedro's personal perspective, we promised you, that'll be in the last leg. And a nice video that he has submitted with, as no surprise, John Emmett as well. And our usual day in history. Whiskey, Tango Foxtrot. Julie, do you spell whiskey with an E or not?
Yes.
You do?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, we're going to debate that today, too. These are important matters, how to spell whiskey, right, Andrew?
Very important for a Scot.
Okay, that's it. I just want to go back again and thank John Rogers. We have a lot of comments about this segment on the DF-95 on the radio-controlled yachting, as he called it, which we're delighted to hear him say that. And several of you, since we've been talking about this the last couple of shows, asked about the ski yachting competition at the Gstaad Yacht Club. Stad, as you would say if you're not so German or so French. But this is happening next weekend, not this present weekend, but next weekend, the 25th annual ski yachting competition for the Gstaad Yacht Club, of which I'm a proud founding member back in 1998. There were 10 of us that founded the club, and we have the pleasure of inviting the members and the reciprocal clubs, friends, and a lot of clubs come to this thing now for skiing during the day and yachting at night in the local schwimmbad, in the local Gstaad swimming hall. And that goes on next Saturday and Sunday, Friday and Saturday, rather, the 7th and 8th of March. Skiing during the day on Mount Egley, both the adults and the youth. There's a junior component to this, too. It's a hugely popular event, one of which we at the club are very proud, and we won't say more than that except to say it's a major success. And if your club gets invited or has an interest in going, let me know, or we'll put you in touch with our friends at the Gstaad Yacht Club, obviously up in the Alps in Switzerland, and get you there, because it is a lot of fun and a way cool event, including the radio-controlled yacht racing and those IACC models that were donated by Bill Koch.
Oh, good.
After he won
Isn't this a celebratory year for Gstaad?
It is. 98 to, well, the 23 was the 25th anniversary of the club, and we started this ski yachting competition 2 years after we started the club. Mm-hmm. I ran up and down the pool in a black and white striped jersey, umpired the first few matches. I'll tell you the story, Andrew. Since you're on here, you'll appreciate this.
I've done it 4 times.
You have?
And I've done 2 Rourke dinners there as well. It's great fun. One time we did quite well in the skiing, and I think Eddie Wardnowen and I did the model yacht stuff. And it was one of those days when they hadn't quite tuned them, and the yellow one won every race. So it was they're 2 theoretically matched boats, but it's quite tricky.
It's a cool event, isn't it?
It's great fun. Yeah, I would be going again. Sadly, I have an annual ski trip with a bunch of surgeons from all over the world, where we also take our families, and that happens to be the same weekend it starts. So I'll be in Val d'Isère at the same time.
Well, it's a cool club. We started it, as you know, Andrew. We thought we'd have 50 members. It was started on track at a Formula One event. Mm-hmm. Bernie Ecclestone and a few others, myself, His Majesty King Constantine, the late great King Constantine.
Okay.
And now we have over 400 members, a clubhouse. The club's a member of the International Council of Yacht Clubs. But just back to this pool action for a minute, Andrew. In the very early days, before we really knew how to do this, you were trying to set a course. There's big fans looking at this photo at the right end of the pool, as you would know, Andrew. Huge fans, and it's a little dodgy. We now put fans on the side of the pool as well, so that you don't sail into a hole on either side of the track. It's match racing, one boat at a time against another boat. But the problem is getting the marks set. Now, Julia, how do you imagine you get the marks set in the pool properly? They're being blown around by the fan.
the swim in and use
exactly. You use a frogman, you use a diver.
Yeah.
And there was some local guy who they'd arranged to come in and set our marks, and there were lead weights on the bottom of the pool. No problem. And Andrew, as you can imagine, getting the marks just right. We're yachtsmen. We're serious about getting proper windward lures. And this poor guy he didn't have a tank on. He'd dive down. He'd get organized. With the, we'd say, okay, move it a couple, a meter to this way or that way. He'd go down and move it. And then the string, the ball is being blown around by the wind on the surface. And he came up and shouted something in French. Meg was, I don't know what Meg was, 5 or 6 years old, thought this was hilarious. She was with me, I'm holding her hands. And the guy comes back up the second or third time and he says, fondue. And I said, what? And Meg says, hey, Daddy, I think he's saying, fuck you. And he was. He was not amused because we're trying to get him to move the balls around and make it right. He says, fondue. She understood the French better than I. It's a great event. And as Andrew can attest, the camaraderie, like we always celebrate here in our beloved sport. And a lot of kids now. We didn't have this junior competition originally. But as I mentioned in the show notes, sad passing of our founding Commodore. He was the original Commodore for 4, 5, 6 years. George Nicholson, a hell of a guy, a senior serious person in your country, Andrew, and beyond as the founder of Camper Nicholson. Boats International did a nice memorial to him. Legendary yacht broker George Nicholson of Camper and Nicholson's. He passed away a couple days ago, 1937 to 2025. May he rest in peace.
He has a lovely twinkle in his eye.
He did have a twinkle in his eye, didn't he, Andrew?
He did. And the Erzbergers, they ran it for years. Peter and Mark were fantastic.
Yeah, Peter and his wife and the kids, the 2 boys, who are good, keen sailors. One of them's living, I think, in New York or Montreal, living over here. So, yes, there's Claire Harrington on, Vice Commodore Harrington. She is trying to get a New York team to go. We keep talking about getting St. Francis Yacht Club there. Magnus the Magnificent is on. He said, coolest guest in history, legend. Good evening, Tom, Julie, and, of course, Andrew. Clark Chapin is in Michigan. Today his high was, they say, was 12 centigrade. Tomorrow the high will be -5 C. That's not cold, Clark. When it gets to be -5 Fahrenheit, then it's cold. Jared DeYoung, Steve Gruber, Gordon Smith, Whiskey, the water of life, and Akavit all mean water of life. Indeed, Gordon Smith, very erudite person, Gordon is, the Brit living in Denmark, outside Copenhagen. He's saying to Claire Harrington, what goes on in Greenwich stays in Greenwich. And Chris Exley and Ted Ryman wants to know where my finger wag was, Julia, for that F-bomb. Fondue! From now on. No finger wag, Julia?
That's not in English.
Okay. Andrew, reduce your headspace just a bit if you would, kind of match up with Julia and myself, and we'll get maybe that whatever. Yeah, tip your camera down a bit. There we go. Fondue!
I'm going to use that, however.
You are?
Yes.
Well, you maybe can use it here in the FOSI Focus, our FOSI Friends of Sailing Illustrated segment that I've been putting more and more often at the top of the show. Cool people, they are. And you're really using this to promo upcoming shows. Next Tuesday, we have Andrew Dolly DeVola coming on, one of the most popular sailors, certainly in Australia, if not in the entire world. He will be a commentator on the live feed of the JJ Giltonen. Gosh, I have trouble with that. Next Tuesday, the 4th of March, that is, of course, the Sydney Harbor 18s Intergalactics. It's their major annual event taking place on Sydney Harbor. And he will be telling us a little bit about the history of that fabulous, 90 years that's been going on, a long time. That boat won in 1952. Julia, I think your phone is on. Did we not get your phone speaker turned off? You're getting, I don't want to upset anybody, but you're getting calls from pings from your boyfriends as usual.
Never mind.
1952 and 54, JJ was won by a yacht from New Zealand called Intrigue. He's going to tell us about the history. That is Andrew Dolly DeVola will next Tuesday the 4th in our show. And he will also be telling us about the favorite, who is our FOSI, skipper of Rag and Famish hotel team, Harry Price, who we've been talking about. They've had a fabulous season, he and his crew. In fact, some of the ink that they've been getting is that prior to his 18s career, Harry had already established a brilliant record as a youth sailor. He started match racing in 2017.
Yep.
That's hard to believe. That's almost 10 years that I've known Harry and his family, David and Christian and sister Olivia. And Pricey, young Pricey, Harry, has won nearly every youth match racing regatta in the world, including the 52nd Annual Governor's Cup, the International Youth Match Racing Championship at Newport Beach, California, which, of course, we cover live, the Gov Cup TV team, and we'll do so again this year, the last week of July. And the last weekend of June, we'll also be covering, Julia, the Rose Cup.
Aha!
The Rose Cup, of course, named after Andy Rose, the Gov Cup guru, is the U.S. National Youth Match Racing Championship. We'll be covering that live as well this year because it's being hosted by the prestigious Balboa Yacht Club. Steve Groover says he's curious about what one of those 18-foot rocket ships cost. Not sure, Steve, but we'll be sure to ask Dolly DeVola next week. And then the following Tuesday, another FOSI's coming on. Do you recognize this person, Julia?
No.
He's a regular commentator. We don't see his mug all that often, but on the 11th of March, Mark Reed, who's a Michigander.
Can't be all bad.
He can't be all bad, or maybe he is because he is from it. He lives over on the west side of the state, though, Grand Rapids area. He will be our live guest, and he is updating us on something that is very cool indeed, and that is the Chicago Yacht Club's Heart of America Challenge from 1987. And the club is having its sesquicentennial this year, the Chicago Yacht Club. And to mark that, they're having a series of talks, including one in March on the Heart of America, on their first and only America's Cup campaign. And Mark will preview, it's a crew reunion and club night at the Chicago Yacht Club on the 21st of March. And as I said, CYC, one of the most prestigious clubs in this country, also a member of the International Council of Yacht Clubs. They're located, of course, in Chicago. It's well known as being the organizing authority for the annual Mackinac race, Chicago to Mac race, which has been going on since 1906, Andrew. 1906.
Yeah, that's pretty impressive. That we always think that the first race was the Newport Bermuda race, the first real offshore race, and there were earlier races. I mean, the race across from Cowes to St. Malo, Cowes Dinar, was very early on, enough for there to be a cup from King Edward VII. So, but really the long offshore races started first Newport Bermuda and then the Fastnet a couple of years after that, on the basis that they'd been and done the Bermuda race and thought we should have something like it.
Yeah, and this club, of course, runs a freshwater race, and it's a long one. It's not quite as long as the other Great Lake race called the Trans-Superior Race across Lake Superior, which is run from time to time. But their season starts May 1st, runs through the end of October, and we'll hear all about that, plus the other things they're doing to celebrate their 150th year, the sesquicentennial, Julia.
I'm proud of them.
From 1875 to 2025. Chicago Yacht Club. One other FOSI note is this. We have another FOSI who's a painter, as it turns out, an artist. This is Stingette. Do you know this FOSI Stingette?
Yes.
That is Stingray's partner, his girlfriend / partner. Stingette painted this for him yesterday. She named it Baton Down the Hatches. I don't think named it after Baton Rouge or Baton Cannon, as he's better known, but she is a FOSI fantasy fun. She loves to paint, and I asked Stingray earlier today what music she listens to while she's painting, because she's up in her own, atelier and painting away while he's down here watching the show. And he says she listens to classic rock, and I asked if that meant yacht rock. And he said, I don't think so. She doesn't like yacht rock. Do you like yacht rock, Andrew? That genre of music?
I'm not quite sure. I don't think I know what it is.
Actually, it is a radio station who's chosen their own version of yacht rock.
Well, that's true. The station started it long ago, but you hear it now on Spotify.
There are a couple of songs called "Sailing."
It's exactly. It's songs like that from the 70s and early 80s, I guess. And I'm sure in the chat now, everyone's going to put their favorite or least favorite yacht rock song in the chat. Yacht rock, Ed Worley is saying. But yes, we're going to have to someday do a show on yacht rock and feature your favorite. We'll get a copyright strike. That picture, courtesy of Stingray, thank you. That ends our FOSI Focus segment for today. Julia?
Sir?
I ask you and Andrew both, what are we celebrating today?
Mardi Gras.
No.
No?
No. Andrew, what are we celebrating today?
Yeah, I'm not sure I looked that one up either. Non-leap year. Yeah.
It starts today, the 28th, and runs through next Saturday, the 8th, in a yes, exactly, in a great yachting nation of Brazil. The Carnival of Brazil, Carnival. Samba music, vibrant costumes, and nonstop dancing. This annual festival in Rio is the ultimate party experience you won't forget. The Brazilian Carnival has a history dating back to the 18th century. You all know it's a pre-Lenten celebration. It's evolved to include more secular elements. During the 19th century, the Carnival became more of a public spectacle, and then a major event in Brazilian culture. And in the 1930s, the government of Rio de Janeiro began to invest in the Carnival, and it became an official event. Today, it is considered the biggest party in the world, attracting millions of people from all over the globe. I thought that was Cows Week, Andrew, the biggest party in the world.
I think the Venetians would have a prior claim on this.
I think you're right. But that's what's going on. And as usual, Julia,
yes,
we have a video.
Oh, good.
Dancing and vibrant outfits as thousands took to the streets of Rio de Janeiro days ahead of the start of the carnival. These parties took place amid scorching heat, but this didn't prevent revelers from making the most.
Carnival is uncontrollable. Carnival is to take to the streets. The streets are ours. That's the idea. I think that Carnival is much more than what people who are not from here imagine. Because it's time to go to the streets and cheer, to forget a little bit what is happening, but at the same time, to also put out your ideas and political views.
And they're not the only ones enjoying the pre-carnival celebrations. An event over on Copacabana Beach provided an opportunity for pets to take part in the festivities.
Dogs come dressed up as us. It's fantastic. It's refreshing in the shade, despite the heat. Bring your dog. The carnival in Rio is full of dogs.
According to the City Hall, more than 160,000 people attended the street parties over the weekend. Elsewhere in the city, followers of Afro-Brazilian religions held a ritual to bless the Sambadrome, the venue where samba schools will parade during the carnival.
Carnival's doors are open, waiting all tourists, everyone from samba, the people that make the samba schools work all year. One more amazing carnival, a moment of love and respect.
Rio's carnival will officially kick off on the 28th of February and last until the 8th of March.
So, Andrew, you've been to Stad Yacht Club ski yachting. Have you been to Carnival?
No, never been. So I'd love to go to South America, but I've not yet made it.
Well, I think we need to get Julia's jet that she's going to buy or charter that Jonathan Frank and Claire Harrington are going to fly, and we're all going to start using that jet to get around to events that we haven't been to that we want to go to, Julia.
I'll show you around because I've been there.
Have you got the jet yet?
It depends. The size depends on how many
people. It needs to be big because everyone wants to fly here and go with us.
I know.
So,
but they may not make them that big.
J. Frederick Bland says we should get our crew together, KREWE, and go to NOLA, New Orleans, for Mardi Gras. By the way, Sean Hogan's on, and the Fondue Cup is going, the Phuket Cup. The Fondue Cup is going on in Thailand. It's 0423 there. Sean Hogan is there. Remember, he was in that picture the other day with Alistair Murray. And Sean is there. Bravo Zulu, Sean. You've come through your health problems and back on the yachting circuit. And I understand he's a painter too, so maybe we can get a painting out of him to use in that FOSI Focus segment. That would be great. Yeah, we saw those banjos. They weren't really banjos, Mark. They were banjo ukes, I think, technically. But, I have a banjo uke as well, but let's not go into banjos right now, shall we? So that's what we're celebrating today, the FOSI, and of course, the start of Carnival. I've not been myself, but maybe another year, Julia, once you get that jet tuned up. And we're also celebrating, as always, those of you who make this show possible, that come on here regularly and watch, who give us a few bucks each month to help pay our exorbitant streaming bills. They keep going up. But Rick Banner says he'll come on and serve the peanuts on your jet. We can't have peanuts. People, doctor, they've stopped here in this country serving peanuts on airlines because of the peanut allergy. Is that an overreaction, or is that a real problem?
It's a genuine problem, but I do think, they sort of, it's a good excuse not to serve peanuts, and they serve all sorts of rather nasty other snacks, both EA and virgin.
Right.
Peanut allergies certainly exist, and it's a bit of a mystery why it's much more common than it used to be. I think people are now being encouraged to feed their children peanuts much younger, and that may arrest it. But yeah, it happens, and people have died.
Now say that again, yeah, because you get anaphylactic shock, you get mumps, get right. What do you mean? Parents are being encouraged to feed their kids peanuts younger, or not feed them?
To feed them younger, so that they actually get used to them.
Oh, really?
Feed them small doses of peanut.
What happens if you give them a small dose and they have a reaction?
Well, because for some reason, if they become accustomed to it younger, then they don't produce the full allergic response. I don't know. It's slightly out of my field. I thought every American child lived on peanut butter and jelly, so I'm not sure.
Well, I certainly do. I love peanut butter, and I've got some of your here on the back table. I still have your Royal Yacht Squadron Seville orange marmalade. Didn't you give that to us?
I did.
I've not opened it yet. And of course, we also have the Australian favorite peanut butter alternative, I guess, Vegemite.
Yeah.
And what's the European version of Vegemite called?
Marmite. We have Marmite. It's less gritty. It's smoother than that.
And which is better between peanut butter, Marmite, and Vegemite?
Yeah, that's a wonderful fight. That'll start them up on the chat, because Australians like Vegemite and we like Marmite, but they are similar.
Well, I much prefer peanut butter, but it's Clark Chapin's right. The crap, sorry to use that word, that they feed you now on planes, which is all just carbs and salt, little pretzels, and it's just terrible for you.
Mm-hmm.
I much prefer peanuts, but you can't even, if you take peanuts on a plane now, they'll abscond. They will. Well,
yeah. They usually announce, if there is somebody on board who's said they've got a peanut allergy, they'll announce it and say, please don't open any peanuts. But I think it is an excuse.
Okay, well, there's a lot of back and forth in the chat between Marmite and Vegemite. We won't go into that debate, but the other thing we're doing is again in this A block that I call it the A block, the opening segment of the show, we are really pushing with a lot of others. And Magnus has done a nice segment today. We'll talk about on his Rule 69 blog. We'll talk about it in a minute. But we're really pushing hard to get parasailing reinstated as a demonstration event for Brisbane 2032. We talked about this at length with that great panel that we had that John Emmett put together for us on our Friday 31 January show. And today, Magnus was with the gentleman who founded YesWeSail.org. And we'll talk about, as I said, talk about that in a minute. And Andrew,
I'm going down to see him tomorrow.
You're going to see
I'm going down. Well, Magnus asked me to help them, and we got them. They're staying in Rourke in Cowes, and I'm organising that they'll fire a gun from the Royal Yacht Squadron when they do their circuit of the island.
Oh, good.
And he's going to sail. Well, we'll talk about that in a sec, because I've got at least one photo. But that's what we're pushing here is yeswesail.org, but more importantly, to get parasailing into the 2032 Paralympics as a demonstration event in Brisbane, Julia.
What we should do is develop like 3 things for you to do, you listening at the moment, to do to help that.
Well, there's one thing. You're absolutely right. Oops. In fact, we're going to go into that segment right now, but there's one thing in particular that people can do, and that is to contact their member national authorities, especially Australians, Aussies. Mm-hmm. So if you're in the UK, you talk to the RYA, you talk to anybody you know who's involved in world sailing, but most importantly, the Aussies need to gang up in Brisbane, and we'll get Warren Chaucer to help with that effort because he's in Brisbane. And I know they got lots of problems with the games getting ready, and they're way behind schedule, and they don't have events and facilities and so on. But we need to do this, don't we, Andrew?
We do. It's absolutely vital. I think Magnus has been leading the charge, but I back him to the hilt, and I've spoken to my friends in the RYA. I really needs to be pushed. The big problem is what happens at the next level, where the world sailing are really taking a grip with the IOC.
Okay, well,
but it's our last chance, I think, to get them in.
Well, who knows? I mean, maybe down the road it'll come back and we don't, but we shouldn't lose this chance, should we? That's the important thing. We need to, and it needs to be displacement sailing because, we've got to have boats like we've had in the past. But speaking of Magnus, the Magnificent, you know who that is, Julia? Andrew?
I guess it's him young, is it?
Age 15. I came up with that photo.
How
Super
lovely.
FOSI Magnus MTM, Magnus the Magnificent Wheatley at age 15 in the Isle of Wight. That was one of the British America's Cup teams. I think Ed Worley would know. That's the 83 British Cup teams polo. Victory 83. Their rugby shirts. That was the day, wasn't it? I mean, those shirts were great. Why don't we have rugby shirts, Julia, back in the sport?
I don't know.
Rugby and polos, man. Okay, they can make a lot.
Rugby doesn't wear rugby shirts anymore. They wear sort of skin-tight synthetic things. That's because the problem in rugby is you could grab the guy by the shirt, and they now wear very tight things that they can't be grabbed by.
I thought you grabbed them by the shorts too and pulled the shorts down if you wanted to slow them down a bit. I'll tell you, we did worse things in ice hockey, but that's another issue. Victory.
That is warfare, that sport.
Well, the worst sport is water polo. What goes on under the water? They now have underwater referees.
Really?
Yeah, they do. They have referees that watch underwater and a lot of guys, when I played water polo briefly, and we wore 2 swimming suits, 2 Speedos.
Yeah.
For added protection. That didn't help much. Didn't help much.
Oh,
Stingray gets a finger wag, Julia. He's saying at age 15 was Magnus still growing nuts. That's terrible, Stingray. Grab their shorts, Joels. We're digressing. We have the doctor on here. We better become a little more decorous.
Yes.
Speaking of Magnus the Magnificent at age 15. Now, this was today. He met how do you say it? Is it Pitch? How do you say it, Andrew?
I think it's Pitch.
Donnie Pitch, who's I guess a Brit, and he is going to sail, and he's blind or nearly blind?
Completely blind. He had a horrible accident. He was blinded on a ship. And
he was a Navy pilot, right? For your British Navy?
No, he's not. He's Spanish.
Oh, he's Spanish.
Yeah. This is why he's going to sail these funny boats that you may have seen. You remember the first pre-America's Cup event in Spain, not in Barcelona, but along the coast.
Yeah, these are the rudderless boats. They sail there between Barcelona, and they have them in Valencia too, and we lived there. Yes.
Yeah,
and it's all trimming and heeling the boat to steer.
It's all weight movement across the boat. You steer it by weight, and he's as a publicity for parasailing to try and gain more publicity for Brisbane, he's going to sail around the Isle of Wight, which is quite a daunting prospect, I think.
Oh, it is.
But there's amazing instrumentation, right? That's developed GPS and verbal, oral, talking GPS.
Yeah, I think it's an oral thing that he can hear what's going on in a way that he knows what's happening to the boat more. Obviously, his balance is good. But yeah, I'm looking forward to meeting him tomorrow.
And when does he kick off? When does he start this circumnavigation of the Isle of Wight?
Well, at the moment, the plan was to do it in August, which is probably just after Cows Week, I think. Originally, they wanted to do it during Cows Week, which I think will be chaos. I'm trying to gently persuade them that that's not going to be viable. But anyway, we'll see. The actual date isn't decided yet.
Great. I didn't realize he was Spanish, obviously, but that is cool. And Magnus wrote about him in his Rule 69 blog today on Substack, and he said in a text to me, he said, "Oh, great news, Andrew," meaning Andrew McIrvine, who's on as our guest today. He saw the promo for the show. He is the best, and he said, "By the way, I am meeting Dani Pich, I think it is in Spanish then. Yes, we sail founder in an hour." This was earlier today, obviously, at the Royal Ocean Racing Club, and we'll send you photos, which he has done, and he's also posted in his Rule 69 blog. He is planning on sailing around the Isle of Wight this summer during Cows Week, Andrew, to raise awareness for sailing's re-inclusion in the Paralympic Games at Brisbane 2032.
Mm-hmm. I was introduced to blind sailors 20 or 30 years ago, and I'm just thinking I haven't been back in touch with them for a long, long time. I don't know where they are.
When you get off the air, let's do that and see what they're up to. What country? Are they here or where are they?
They were here, but they were initially from another country. I mean, at this moment, I can't remember.
Track that down. Let's see what we can do. But regardless, as we said, Magnus had this coverage, great coverage, photos and so on, and a nice article as he always does. Yes, we sail. An extraordinary meeting with an extraordinary individual and a request to the sailing community. That's you, and that is to do what we've just all been talking about on here, which is to get to our national authorities, to World Sailing, and anybody that has any influence whatsoever with the Brisbane 2032 organizing committee, because they're the ones that make the call about a demonstration event where we've already missed the cutoff to get into the games, into the parasailing games, Andrew, as a one of the regular sports. So it's demonstration. Now, speaking one last comment about Magnus, this is a comment he made about you a couple days ago on the 27th of Feb in his blog post. He was talking about the RORC, but he couldn't help bringing you up, Andrew. He said, "Can you just imagine trying to run the Maxi Association with everyone having an ego the size of Jupiter and Donald Trump combined, with business schedules that even Elon Musk would frown at? It must be a nightmare. The softest skills of diplomacy aligned with deftly delicate," nice alliteration,
yes,
"eggshell walking must make those charged with the task of corralling the egos and working with the owner's representatives an almost impossible, thankless, joyless task. I admire deeply those that do it." And he was referring to you in his piece,
yes,
Andrew, the other day.
Yes.
Yeah, very, very kind of him. And he always has a wonderful way with words.
He does.
Yeah, it's certainly not the easiest job, and sometimes it gets quite testing. These people they're not used to having people around them who don't say anything other than "yes, sir, how high shall I jump?"
Exactly.
So if you start telling them that they can't do things, or things they don't think are right, they don't take it terribly well. And of course, the owners' representatives are equally difficult because they're fighting furiously for their own camp, and you can't keep everybody happy. But you know, I've survived it for 12 years. I am seriously considering bowing out, but I've got to find somebody to take it on, because we've built it a lot from when I first was sort of headhunted to do it, and at that time there was really only Portacevo, and we've built it up an awful lot since then. and it would be nice to keep it going, not let it collapse.
First, somebody has to design the gold medal to give to you.
Well, no, I mean, yeah, there are all sorts of strong personalities, and I'm not popular with all of them. So it is a very tricky job.
Well,
it's got much trickier.
That was Magnus MTM, as we now call him, the 27th of Feb, in his Rule 69 blog on Substack. Just back on the parasailing, a couple of key comments. Sean Hogan, who's, because of his health situation, is now in a wheelchair, and he says, as president of Sailability Victoria, of that Australian state, and president of Yachting Victoria, there's lots of support for parasailing. The problem is political at the international level. Alistair's wondering, Julia, if you were referring to BADS, B-A-A-D-S, the Bay Area Association of Disabled Sailors. I sailed, Alistair did, in the Bay Area in the 90s, and a number of them were blind, great people. Herb somebody, he's remembering.
I think
Herb Meyer, he says in a subsequent comment.
Oh.
You see that?
Yes, I know. And he was a great guy, and he did sail.
Well, let's check out BAADS, BADS, and see what we can do, shall we?
Yes, but I think the guy I'm thinking about was around before there was a BADS.
Okay, well, nonetheless, that's our FOSI segment. Now I have a poll, because we have a new segment in the show, and we're going to have a poll about what the cover slide should be. And I thought we could do a stuffy, simple, the kind of the normal Sailing Illustrated, not very interesting TFE graphics, because I'm not a graphic artist, and I, pull this stuff together. And this would be the news in brief cover slide. Or I could do something a little racier, Julie, because we get criticized for being kind of girly focused and doing girly stuff here and not too much male stuff. So we could do this one, news in brief. We have two options that I'm presenting to you and to Andrew and all the FOSI. Do you prefer this news in brief or the more staid, simple, or this one?
That should be news in briefs.
In briefs. We could put an S on there, a parenthesis, parenthetical S. Julia, what's your preference?
I don't like either one of them.
You don't?
No.
Then you design it. Andrew, do you have a preference? Do you like?
Not keen on either, I'm afraid. I'm like Julia. Sorry.
Oh, that's
You're going to have to go back to the drawing board.
That is really, really.
Not very helpful.
That is really a cop-out, you guys. Come on, what's wrong with this?
Yeah, Claire wants to know what the third choice is.
I think that would be fun once or twice, but if you did that every week, it would.
No.
Number one, please, says Ed Worley. The paper plane, the paper plane. Magnus says stayed, S-T-A-I-D. Blake Middleton up in Minnesota says sock stuffers. J. Frederick Blandis. What's the third choice? Somebody design me a third choice. Since you don't like either of my choices, you don't like this one? That one's okay, isn't it?
Yeah, it's okay. But
it's okay.
But nobody seems to like that one. I think that Andrew is correct. Clark Chapin says, okay. Well, that was the FOSI poll, but here's the new segment regardless. Here's what the segment's going to be. It's quickies. And this publication has had a 60-year run here in this country. Sailing Magazine ends its print run. It'll still be online, but they announced a couple weeks ago that their long run as a print magazine has ended. The publication started as a newspaper for Lake Michigan. I remember this as a kid. I'm sure many of you in the area do, in the Great Lakes area. For Lake Michigan sailors, and grew into a glossy oversize. This thing was tabloid and then some sized. National Sailing Magazine, respected by readers and advertisers alike for the quality of its writing and especially photography, published its last printed issue January 2025. Founded in '66, it was America's longest published pure sailing magazine. It's gotten a lot of coverage, that in Scuttlebutt. The next short segment here is that the Yachting New Zealand CEO, David Abercrombie, is about to step down. Has announced that he's retiring. He's not been pushed out by any means. He's, by all accounts, done a terrific job. Yachting New Zealand Chief Executive David Abercrombie has today announced his retirement. This is a few days ago, bringing down the curtain on more than 14 years at the organization's helm. Maybe we could hire him for U.S. sailing. Abercrombie was appointed in 2010 and has overseen significant developments at all levels of the sport, from grassroots to Olympic sailing. He will step down at the end of June. Quote, after much reflection, I've decided the time is right for someone else to lead Yachting New Zealand and take the sport into its next exciting phase. It has been a privilege to serve the sailing community, and I am immensely proud of the Yachting New Zealand team and board and the incredible things we have together achieved. So bravo zulu to him.
That's nice.
Did you know him, Andrew?
No, I didn't. I've never met him, no.
And I don't believe I've ever met him either, but most everybody.
I've only been to New Zealand once, and it was for the America's Cup back in the Peter Harrison days.
Peter Harrison. There's a guy. There's a great guy. Okay, another shorty here is just to wrap up on the Vendée Globe. Maybe we'll do a bigger wrap up in due course, but this is day 110. There are 3 boats still in the hunt for a finish position. And Tip and Shaft had a nice piece on it, brief piece today. The 10th edition of the Vendée Globe is about to come to an end with the expected arrivals on Saturday of Manuel Cousin. It's a French guy in 31st place. And then next Tuesday, it looks like Fabrice Amadeo will finish. And on the other hand, poor old Dennis van Weinberg, I guess it is, who had been struggling with a problem with his mainsail halyard, which is continuing, by the way, is expected to arrive on the weekend of 9-10 March, i.e. after the line closes on 7th March. So after all this effort, he's going to get a DNS for finishing.
Did they really decide that?
Yeah, if he finishes after the 7th of March, which is the time limit.
But there was a big thing online to say, oh, come on, let him finish.
I would too. I'd at least do something, but he'll get a warm reception, no doubt. But his mainsail troubles continue. According to the Vendée Globe website, he has had a mainsail halyard problem since the beginning of the weekend after it fell down again. He is presently progressing, making slow progress without a mainsail, although I think he may have gotten it back up. This latest mishap is again significantly delaying his arrival in La Salle d'Olonne, which now seems to be set to be after the finish line closes, meaning the time limit runs out on 7 March at 0700 UTC. So hopefully he doesn't end up completing his round-the-world race without an official ranking, finishing after the time limit. There he is on the map. There's one boat just about to finish. They think even yet today. That is the guy we just mentioned. And then there's another boat well offshore, 600, 700, 800 miles, maybe not quite that far, 400 or 500 miles. And then this guy's Belgian, Dennis van Weinberg. He is nearly 800 nautical miles, or was earlier when I pulled this off the website. Still 800 nautical miles to go, so it doesn't look like he's going to make that in a week at his present speed of, he's been doing 10 knots when this was pulled off, but it looks like a long run. Andrew, any thoughts on the Vendée Globe overall or on these stragglers?
Well, yeah, it's tough for these guys who've obviously struggled with all sorts of technical issues. I think what's remarkable this year is the fact that 33 of them out of the 40 that were allowed to enter have made it, because that's the attrition on other years has been much higher, and that's pretty impressive that those boats and the helms have managed to get round with that little trouble. So it's an unbelievably tough undertaking.
While we're on these round-the-world races, of course, we have the Ocean Race, and before that, the Ocean Race Europe, a little circuit around Europe. We don't need to go into that at length today. What about this race that's just started in Antigua, around the world?
Well, I
the little boats.
Yeah, I chucked some photographs in there because a good friend of mine who was recently, can you believe, the naval attaché at Pearl Harbor from the Royal Navy. So he was a captain in the Royal Navy, but he's now retired. But he decided he actually bought this boat in Hawaii, shipped it back. These boats are one design. They're plywood, the sort of thing you can build in your backyard. They're 19 foot or 5.8 meters long. They're all to a pattern. and a very simple rig. And they have a round the world trip that started in Lanzarote. They got to Antigua about three weeks ago, and they set off again on Sunday. They started out with 20. They were down to 15 on the second start on their way to Panama. Then this is all run by Don McIntyre, who runs the Golden Globe. But they are allowed, the round the world Golden Globes haven't got any modern technology. They've got sextants and no GPS. These guys are allowed GPS, but they've also got to do star sights, sun sights, and have got a sextant each. They are widely varying in experience and age, and also the state of the boats. The 15 that set off, Kerry Harris, who's my friend, was second in the first leg, and he was rapidly up to second in this leg. And it's on yellow brick tracking if you want to look at it. They'll be trucked. They aren't going to go through the canal on water. They're going to be trucked across the Panama Peninsula and then drop back in. Then they go to Tahiti, Fiji, Darwin, eventually Mauritius, Cape Town, St. Helena, Recife, and then back to Antigua about next March. I mean, downwind, they're lucky if they're making 5 knots.
And this is the photo you sent, Andrew. Is this?
Yeah, that's Kerry's boat. Yeah,
and it's all of 6 meters long, 5.8 meters,
that's
right?
That. Yes, 19 foot.
Jesus, excuse my language.
Yeah,
and
well,
what are there? 15 or 16 of them in the race?
There were 20. They're down to 15.
Wow. Well, I haven't been following the race at all. In the chat, let us know if others want to, follow it.
Single-handed, yeah. There's not much room for anybody else.
Andrew Dolly DeVola is saying the boats, are designed by Aussie Don McIntyre, and 2 Aussies are racing. Clark Chapin's wondering if they're going around the world the wrong way. But that's one of these boats, and you say there's 16 of them. Do you know how many started out, Andrew?
20 started. There are now 15.
Oh, dear. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Would you want to go around the world, Julie, on a boat like that?
Not on your life.
Huh?
Not on your life.
19 feet long. That's the length of the interlake that my dad and Clark Chapin, Joe Holtzman used to, 18 feet. And
yeah.
I used to race a 19-foot boat called a Flying Scot. And, if it was breezy, it was a scary day to go across Pensacola Bay. It's Escambia Bay. 19-foot boat, let alone around the world. Okay. Well, so much for all that. One other piece of news, Andrew, because we talked about it. Microsoft today announced that Skype is shutting down after 2 decades, started by a sailor, by the way. And Skype's shutdown comes 14 years after Microsoft bought the service for $8.5 billion in cash. Hence some of the sailing that goes on. You can tell us about the sailor that started that in a moment, Andrew. Marking the company's largest ever acquisition at the time, Microsoft integrated the service into its other products such as Office and its ill-fated mobile operating service, Windows Phone. Skype's popularity has faded in recent years, despite a pandemic bounce that lifted other competing products, including, of course, Zoom, Google Meet, and Cisco WebEx. Skype has also faced increased competition over the last decade and a half from apps like FaceTime, Apple's FaceTime, and Meta's WhatsApp. Plus, Microsoft has been investing heavily in Teams. That's their new version of Skype, which offers it's very Zoom-like, many of the same services. So, Julia, Andrew, I'm thinking that maybe, we can always use Zoom. We do use Zoom when we have multiple people, but technically Skype is actually better. We get 1080p, get full HD, full broadcast HD, as we have today with Andrew. And technically here in the studio, it's a little bit easier to deal with the Skype signal. I mean, you see how good Andrew's.
Yeah.
Just blinked out there as we were talking about it on his brand new computer. But, FaceTime is a bit difficult to use. WhatsApp's video is actually quite good to use. What are you just using Zoom, Andrew? What are you using when you're doing calls with your difficult owners?
I've got a Zoom account, so which we pay for, but it's been a mystery to me how Skype worked and how Nicholas made so much money out of it, because for most of us it's free. I mean, I'm talking to you on Skype now, as you know, and I've not got, apart from a login and a password, it's not costing me a penny. And WhatsApp's the same. So it's extraordinary, really, that these systems work. For some reason, I think the only reason one pay, you get half an hour on Zoom for free, but if it's longer, then it cuts it off and you have to start again. So I've got a subscription for the Maxi Association for that, because we have regular meetings of the team. But yeah, I think it's why are we using? I suppose it's rather like all these things. Why have we gone? There have been lots of different systems that we've used. Why do we use Safari? Why do we use Google, Chrome? There were the ones before that. There was MySpace. There were all these things. They sort of become fashionable almost. There's no good reason, because they all do much the same thing.
Well, Zoom was easy to use for meetings during the pandemic, and we use it.
Yeah.
And it's easy to send a link out to everybody, and they sign in. You get 40 minutes free on the Zoom. A 40-minute call is all you get. And I think that was because most classrooms, they were, during the pandemic here in this country at least, they were using Zoom for, teachers were using it for classrooms, which normally lasts 50 minutes, 52 minutes. So by putting it to 40 minutes, the schools had to buy a sub. Right. They had to buy a subscription. Yeah. I've got a subscription too. I think we pay 15 or 16 bucks. I pay 15, 16 bucks a month for this. It's another one of our streaming charges, but not a big deal. And that has 100 seats, I think, or maybe 200 seats. So if we do one of these big Zoom things,
it goes up to 400, I think.
I think you can buy another at a level. For a while, we had the bigger one.
It was 40 and 400.
Yeah, but
yeah.
I've tried to run board meetings or even AGMs on Zoom with lots of people, and I think Zoom works best when there are only half a dozen people and you all know each other. Once it gets bigger than that, it's pretty unmanageable. And I think any of the systems are.
Well, if anybody has a suggestion, Julie, you were going to say something?
I think we ought to be looking forward to Starlink.
Well, Starlink is just the internet connection.
I know.
And Starlink's probably what we're all, or something like that's what we're all going to be using instead of cable or your satellite TV up there. We're going to be using satellite and Starlink or equivalent to connect to the internet, but that's not going to do this kind of meeting stuff.
But I mean, it may offer new.
Not anytime soon. All he's doing is just getting us connected.
Which is fabulous enough. Okay.
Well, it is. And it sounded like that came up at the White House this morning.
I know it did.
Did you hear about that, Andrew? The meeting between Zelensky and Trump?
I'm just so horrified. It's beyond belief. The only thing that I was faintly encouraged by was the fact that a lot of the Doge employees have written a letter and resigned. So perhaps it won't be quite successful.
Some Doge is, Julie and I are quite fond of what Doge is doing. A lot of other people on here, and there's a lot of other people that hate Trump. And I've had one of our FOSI.
Say what Doge is.
Department of Government Efficiency.
Yeah.
That's this thing led by Elon Musk, but I don't want to go into the politics here. But one of our FOSI is not amused because a couple things. We've gotten into the politics, and he does not like Trump. He likes Trump less than you do, Andrew. One of our FOSI.
Well, there's a term about throwing the baby out with the bathwater.
Yes.
Well, and I think we would all like to cut government bureaucracy, but is this quite the way? But I think it's probably best to avoid politics on this show.
Absolutely.
Indeed. But tell us some more about the founder who founded Skype, then sold it to eBay, then bought it back, then sold it again, and made billions.
Which is a terrific skill. Well, Nicholas Enstrom I've known for a very long time, and I think is a really excellent guy. He's put a hell of a lot into sailing, and I mean, you look back at he had one of the early 72s. He's one of the very few people to win 2 Fastnets back to back. I think it must be up to about 7 boats called Ran. The latest one is a 50-footer and has just come second in the Caribbean 600 overall. And, you know, he's a terrific supporter of sailing. He's got a share in Svea, the most recently built J class, and he has great fun in that. And he resigned from the IMA when he got rid of his 72, but he couldn't have been more friendly, and he came bounding up to me and said, I can rejoin now, I've got the J class. So, and I had a brief chat with him in Antigua last week. He's a terrific guy, and he's put an awful lot into sailing. I mean, you could say he slightly killed our Fast 40 class, which was flourishing in the Solent, because he went out and built a boat. It was the ultimate, let's take a gun to a knife fight, because he built a very, very high-tech version, costing multiples of what other people have spent, and killed the class.
This was the original Ran, right? All his boats have been named Ran?
No, it wasn't the original, because there was a 52 before he had the 72s, and then he went back to a 40, and now he's got a 50 again. But this is a Karkik 52, and it's completely different from a TP 52.
How did he do in the preliminary in the Nelson Cup, and then how's he done down in
he won that.
He won that, right? How did he do in the C600?
He won. He had a really close fight with a new French boat called Daguet, which is also a Karkik and very similar. But they had a neck and neck fight round the track, and he ended up second overall to Schuss. So he's got a very good team. He also regularly takes young ones on board, and has a policy of bringing up the next generation. So I think he's a major asset.
This is we're talking in case we didn't say it. Nicholas Zenström, who is he Finnish or is he?
No, he's Swedish.
Swedish.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
he's lived in England for the last X years.
Well, Bravos. By the way, I pulled up one back on the. We're a little helter-skelter here, but I managed to pull up your picture you sent just before we went to air. This is down below on one of these 5.8 meter boats.
Mm-hmm.
Huh?
Yes.
Not exactly spacious. He's got one jet boil, which you can't see is behind him, and 2 bunks, one each side.
So he can move his way to windward?
Yep.
A 19-foot boat, Julia. Huh?
I've never sailed on anything longer than 30. Shorter than 30.
Well, you shouldn't sail on anything shorter than your age, right? You should be sailing on 100-footers, Julia.
Oh, I have. But
100-footers, Julia.
That's beyond me.
Right, Andrew? You shouldn't sail on any boat less than your age and then some.
I think it was your age plus 10 foot. Yeah.
Right.
Exactly. I did achieve that myself.
Well, is this your friend from Hawaii?
This is Kerry Harris, yes.
Kerry, is it K-E-R-R-Y?
K-E-R-I.
K-E-R-I, Harris. And is he a Brit or an American or?
No, he's British. Although he speaks perfect French. He was the naval attaché in Paris before he went to Pearl Harbor.
Okay, well, maybe we can. Yeah, do you know if he has Starlink? Maybe we can get him on the show like we did with Cole Brower during the race. That's a small.
It's funny because I was communicating with him, and he's got comms, but they've got solar power and they're guarding every ounce of electricity. And I haven't had a squeak out of him since he set off last Sunday.
Okay, well,
so
I hope he's okay.
I mean, he's doing all right because he's on the tracker, but he hasn't actually sent any messages back.
Okay. Well, that's Skype. That's our end of our segment. I'm sorry nobody liked my graphics. I'm not surprised. We'll see if somebody comes. Everybody, talk is cheap. You guys will all say, "Oh, your graphics stink," and then no one will send one in, and I'll have to use one or the other. Julia?
That's a challenge.
Now, we do have our AC 38 cup date. I have no slides. This is the only slide. I have one graphic to put in the upper corner, and that is to say 1 hears. And again, I would not bet my life on this, let alone, I wouldn't bet the ranch. I wouldn't bet the ranch, let alone my life. But I am starting to hear consistently from senior serious sources throughout the sport. And I've heard from, again, I never do a 1 hears, as you know, Andrew, without hearing from more than one person of, significant. I learned that long ago, 1979, during your Fastnet race, not yours, but the word is, Commodores, ladies and gentlemen, that they are still shooting for 2027, that the next cup will, in fact, be in 2027, that it will not be in the Middle East, it will not be in New Zealand, it will be on the continent, meaning continental Europe, and not Greece, because that's been rumored. And I keep saying, look, forget about Greece.
Yeah.
They got enough problems there. 1 hears, Andrew, Julia, and others, that it's going to be in Italia.
Oh, that would be good.
Wow. Yeah, that would be good. That would be very good.
I think so, too. I think it would be fabulous for the sport. I think it would be fabulous for the cup. And that is a sailing keen country, mad keen country. Now, where do you think in Italy it might be?
Well, I thought, the rumor mill that I had was that Mr. Bertelli wasn't well, and that therefore that campaign might well be hitting an end point. So otherwise, you might have thought Cagliari on the South Sardinia, but I haven't heard anything. This one's new to me.
Well, check with your sources in Italy. Yeah. Check with Genoa. Check with your sources in Cagliari. We know that Patrizio Bertelli is not well, and we know his son, who's been attending all the meetings along with Max Serena, the son is more of a car guy than a boat guy. But also check with your friend, if you would please, the Commodore of the Yacht Club Costa Smeralda.
That's interesting because, I will. I spent quite a lot of time chatting to him last week. He won the Nelson's Cup, but he had a terrible time with the 600 because they literally got to the top of Antigua after the start, and these big maxis have to have an engine running all the time when they're doing anything, and when there's any maneuver
before swinging their keels.
Well, that one doesn't swing, but just running the halids and the sheets, just even the basic things, everything is on power, and it isn't on generator; it's on the main engine. Same with Lucky, their engine goes all the time. I mean, you do wonder slightly about having, a sailing boat where you have to have the engine running all the time.
Well, and how the hell you sleep? Because of course they don't sleep on that much.
Yeah, it's like the Black Hole of Calcutta, all carbon, and then there's hardly any soundproofing on the engine, and that's where you sleep. And it's and the noise on the deck. I mean,
talk about banjos. I mean, that carbon shell is like a big drum of a banjo. It just reverberates. It's awful.
The noise is phenomenal. But anyway, what happened was the starter motor gave up. So when everything comes under load and the engine's meant to fire up and start, it didn't, and they couldn't fix it. So the worry, in fact, is, and it will worry me like hell. There isn't a manual override for a lot of this stuff, which means that you're down to one winch, manual powered winch that you can handle, say, the main sheet with, or one rope at a time. And if you've got a whole lot of sails up on triple-headed rigs, and they were about to put the third jib up, apparently, And as Andrea Recordati, he's the Commodore we're talking about, he said it could have turned very ugly. And they were lucky they hadn't unfurled the third jib. And then they had to be towed in around the back of the island. And that was the end of the race, which he'd been desperately keen to do for years and years, he told me. So it was tragic for him. And the boat's going really well. He won the Middle Sea race 2 years ago. It was a Wally 93, which has been much improved, because most of the Wallies are only day boats, but this one is very offshore capable. And I felt desperately sorry for him. I'm in constant touch with the manager and race director of Yacht Club Costa Smeralda, Eduardo Recchi. I speak to him every other day almost, and I'm actually going to Milan on Wednesday for their big annual presentation of the season. So perhaps I'll get a bit more on the one heres if I can.
You have an assignment. Our secret agent.
Yeah.
Mr. Doctor, secret agent. We're going to have a new nickname for him. 007. We'll start calling him. Yeah,
believe how many big maxis have got 007 as their sail number.
Well, how many boats in a lot of people.
Yeah, Vespa.
Exactly. Well, that's the one here's. So for what it's worth, again, I wouldn't stake my life or the ranch on it, but I wouldn't even stake my banjo on it, Julia, I don't think. Well, that's the one here.
Anyway, anywhere other than Saudi is as far as would make me happier.
Other than Saudi Arabia.
Yeah,
indeed. Okay, gang, that gets us past the kind of all the newsy stuff as well. Let's before we get into Andrew's extensive, we're going to do an RORC segment here about the stuff going on in the Caribbean and the stuff coming up this Northern Hemisphere summer that the RORC in their 100th year are putting on, including an important fastnet, to say nothing of the revival of the Admiral's Cup. We'll talk about all that in a sec. First, the Coach's Corner from another Brit, our esteemed John Emmett, who's down under in Australia enjoying the perpetual summer program. John Emmett in the Coaching Corner, our Super FOSI, checking in from the esteemed Royal Sydney Yacht Squadron.
Hi Tom, Julia and all the FOSI. This is one of the rare occasions in Australia I'm not wearing a hat because it's pretty sunny for an Englishman. I'm here at the Royal Sydney Yacht Squadron. God, that's a mouthful. And Lily's been doing some J70 training ready for the Sydney Harbour Regatta. We're just popping in for a spot of lunch and there's an amazing amount of activity this time of year. But actually sailing is a worldwide sport, and this year is the first of many years that I've missed the RYA Dinghy Show, which is now in Farnborough. And this is a big gathering of all the clubs, all the classes, and it's amazing how many people commented they didn't manage to see me. It's only 2 days, so it feels pretty busy, and that's why I've launched all 5 of my books. And the other thing is we have a lot of inter-club and inter-class competition in the UK. I'm actually going to miss the Dorset Triangle, the first leg, which is Castle Cove and Sutton Bingham and Lyme Regis, the local clubs racing against each other. And although my first love is, of course, single class racing, one design racing in fact, the multi-class and handicap racing is a big deal. And that's actually announced, the new handicaps for the next 12 months, that's actually announced at the show. So some people will be very pleased when effectively their dinghy becomes slower, and some people will be disappointed when they have to sail faster to win the races. But that is as much of a leveler as it ever can be, because you've got boats which foil, you have boats which trapeze, you have boats which just hike, and so to put it all together it's really, really difficult. And just going back to the foiling, I think we had a wonderful show, and it's so important that all of sailing is integrated, so the clubs offer a huge variety of opportunities. And I think I said the best example being Castle Cove, where the second largest fleet is the Wasps, and people, foil at weekends and sail yachts in the Monday, Wednesday evening racing, and then they go away and sell their youth and junior classes. But I ordered what sounded like a rather delicious curry earlier, which is probably not a particularly good idea in a white t-shirt. So I better go and see if that's turned up. But hopefully join you live on show on Saturday. Well, I need to be very careful it doesn't make me miss my own racing.
You see Gordon Smith. He says, they're not coming back to Weymouth, are they, with a view like that? John Emmett, get to the front of the fleet with John Emmett Sailing. Nice stuff. And yeah, I've seen it. Somebody was mentioning, Alistair, I guess, was mentioning that he stays always at the squadron when he's there. I do too. I've stayed, I don't know how many times. They used to not have very good internet, but then that was true of the New York Yacht Club too. But these days, you got to have good internet in the club rooms, in the cabins. I'm not sure what they're called. What do they call them, Andrew, at the squadron? Are they called cabins? Club rooms? You must know. You must.
No, they're called cabins at the Royal Thames because they are really cabins there. But no, they're just called bedrooms at the squadron.
Yeah. I like to stay down there on the bottom floor in the 600s at the Royal Thames. You know, I think I've stayed more nights in the Royal Thames than any other than my own bed, wherever in the world, but than any other place in the world.
Hmm.
I mean,
Well, my one legacy of being Commodore of the Rorke, because the Rorke used to have pretty basic rooms with a bathroom at the end of the corridor.
Yeah, indeed.
On the basis that the British only bath once a week on Sunday. So that's why the Australians call us soap dodgers.
Soap dodgers.
I managed to, there was some reluctance from the treasurer to spend a lot of money turning two old Georgian houses and start ripping them apart and putting ensuite bathrooms into all the bedrooms. But we did it, and it paid for itself in about 3 years because suddenly the occupancy went from 60% to 100%. So it was well worth it.
Is the stairway going up there still as narrow as it was?
Yep.
That was always a challenge if you'd been down in the bar where the honor bar had been turned on and you were staying late playing ditties with Gary Mull or whomever in the bar. It was always a challenge to get up.
Yeah, but the rooms are a lot nicer.
Oh my goodness! Well, let's get into your segment here, Andrew and Ernest. It's really nice to have you on because you're so knowledgeable and erudite, yada yada yada. But we are going to talk now about start with the RORC's Caribbean 600, the C600, and that was the race course. We've filled you all in about it, so I won't do my camera 4 and finger wagging around the track again. But it is about 600 nautical miles. And it started on, last Monday, yesterday, when we first showed this slide, was on our Tuesday show. And it's all over now, but the shouting, the 16th edition of the Rorke's Caribbean 600 started on Monday the 24th, starting and finishing, as you all know, in Antigua. The classic Royal Ocean Racing Club's nonstop 600 nautical mile race goes around 11 Caribbean islands. And we told you about the winner of the Nelson Cup, the preliminary regatta. Well, Lucky Strikes Gold was the headline. Remember Lucky Strikes, Julia?
Yeah.
Did they sell Lucky Strikes, the cigarette, in the UK?
They did. Yeah, a bit.
So somebody's clever with your copywriting there. Lucky Strikes Gold to take the monohull line honors. They were first to finish. The Juan K 88 Lucky skippered. Let me ask you quick, before I forget, Andrew. You see that Lucky? Why don't you get the RORC and the Royal Yacht Squadron to do what New York Yacht Club does, which is to put boat names in all caps?
Yeah, we used to do it with inverted commas each side. But you're right, it doesn't look very good like that.
Well, and it's, some people italicize them, but in the days before you had computers and italics, you would, and this is how New York Yacht Club started it and still does it. And by the way, as you've seen on here, that's the convention. That's the SI, the Sailing Illustrated Style Book, is to put it in all caps. And it really does help to put the name of the yacht in all caps.
Yeah, I've certainly had, because I've had that discussion with our style book guru, James Boyd, who does all the IMA stuff, and he also does our yearbook and he does the Rorke yearbook, and we've talked about should it be in inverted commas, should it be italic. I don't think we'd thought of having it in uppercase. But that's interesting that New York do that, because certainly I'll have that chat with him and see what we might try it.
Good. Well, one thing that you do is you tell us the number of yachts, the number of sailors, the number of countries involved in these regattas, and it's just terrific. And the Rourke is doing a fabulous job with the PR, and regardless of whether Lucky's in caps or not, but it'd be a nice addition, I think. Skippered by Brian Earhart, who's an American, a German name, obviously, lives in Chicago, New York Yacht Club member. They've taken monohull line honors in the Rourke's 2025 Caribbean 600 in an elapsed time of only 1 day, 17 hours. Andrew, that was not a record. What's the monohull record? Do you remember?
No, the record's 1 hour. It's 40 hours. So they were outside that. But they did the transatlantic race. They knocked a mere 86 minutes off over 8 days, which was exciting to watch that, because it was really touch and go the last day of whether they would crack that, but they did. He's got an awful lot of the old Rambler 88 of George David's crew on as well, and they had a pretty miserable Nelson Cup because the boat is totally tuned for doing downwind. I mean, they told me on the transatlantic they really didn't change any sails. All they did was roll them up and unroll them because of their triple head. They don't have a spinnaker. They just use code 0 size sails, and they sail at an angle of 143 degrees off the wind the whole way. And that's what they do. They just jibe downwind at that angle. So that's a higher angle than most boats, with conventional spinnakers. But they're going so fast that the apparent wind is back, so that this is the most efficient, gets them the best polars. So it's fantastic for a downwind race across the Atlantic, and it's surprisingly good actually for even around the islands. But for the windward leeward races that we had during the Nelson's Cup, they've not got much of a hope against the others, and they're carrying a hefty handicap, despite being 12 foot shorter than the hundreds. They are on a higher rating, so they didn't do very well in that, but they didn't expect to. And I spoke to Brian. He was very relaxed about it. He'd come for the ride, come for fun. He's going to do the North Sound Regatta, and then he's going to go on and do the Transpac and then the Hobart. So the guy's amazing. He's really full on, and he's got a superb team of very well-known faces. And
speaking of whom, and thanks again, because your Rourke PR guys and gals put the names of the crew prominently with a picture. And okay, it's not organized completely right, left to right, first row, second row, but that doesn't matter. But you got Brian, Antonio Cuervas Mons, Brad Butterworth, look at these names, Brian Giorgio, Charlie Enright, Daniela Rodavero, Dean Phipps, another America's Cup winner, a Kiwi, Jan Decker, John Haley, Jonathan Chloe,
Juggy.
Juggy, and Jonathan Rankine. I don't know how to pronounce it. Rankine. Juan Vila, maybe the best navigator, maybe even better than our mutual good friend Stan Reed. Luke Tugas, Mark Bradford, Squark is on this boat.
He suddenly popped up.
Squark.
Yeah. So he's a good guy. I mean, we saw a lot of him last year on Blackjack. So he's Scallywag Blackjack. No, I don't know. He's on every boat, every Australian boat usually. So I was really quite surprised to see him on an American boat. But there he was.
He's also a lot of fun and a good sport. Should I tell you a Squark story?
Yeah, I do. I mean, we're working with him to have a chapter of the IMA in Australia, so he's a good friend.
Okay, quick Squark story. Mark Bradford. We're sailing the Henri van der Aat, the Dutch guy who was then the racing manager for World Sailing, or whatever we were called those days, ISAF. He organized in one of the canals in Amsterdam a canal race with big fans speaking. It's not radio controlled, but regular sit-in yachts, these what are these, sort of like the yachts that have been used in parasailing in the Olympics. And he's organized a canal race, and there's a bunch of very top-notch sailors there. There's a cash prize. This must have been 20, 25 years ago. And Bradford is there. It's the first time I think I met Mark, and we get to know each other. I'm umpiring it. Mm-hmm. Göran Peterson, who would become president of World Sailing, and I are running up and down the canals like we did in the Gstaad Yacht Club pool, umpiring this race. And at one point, Mark, we maybe had it, in Amsterdam, you could smoke pot. Not that any of us was smoking pot, but you could smoke pot in the so-called cafes. And there may have been some alcohol involved. I don't remember, frankly. But there was a party, and we're outside of one of these cafes or bars, and somebody challenged Mark to run around the canal, and that if he ran around the canal, they'd give him something, 50 euro. I don't even think the euro was out then. Give him some money, and if he ran around the canal naked, they'd give him it was a good sum. It was a couple hundred US, something like that. I can't remember, 100 US maybe. And he immediately stripped naked, as an Aussie would do, ran naked around the canal, and came back to where we were, demanded his $100. But in the meantime, one of the Croutonic sailors had stolen his clothes.
Oh, no.
So the poor guy is sitting there, and they stole his clothes. Well, I, being the straight-laced Boy Scout,
gave him your clothes.
No, I went to the guy and I said, you give him his clothes back or you're going to be disqualified from this regatta. This is not correct. He did the thing. You give him the $100. Yeah. It was a very, shall I say, ballsy thing to do.
Yeah.
And that's my Mark Bradford Squark story I've never forgotten.
I want to know where Squark came from.
Where does Squark come from? We'll have to get Mark on here and ask him that. Do you have any idea, Andrew, where his nickname came from? He sounds a little squarky sometimes. Maybe that's it.
I tell you, the other guy who was on the boat, it seems he was only on it for the Nelson's Cup, was Jerry Kirby.
Yeah, I don't see his name in this list, but just to finish up
I can't see his face. I saw him during the week briefly, but he obviously didn't do the long race.
Well, you talk about superb sailors, and Mark Newbrook, Sam Mason, Scott Beavis, Simon Daubney, the other one of Russell's Type 5, Stuart Wilson, and, of course, Will McCarthy. That is a list of seriously good sailors, Andrew.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you just look around at the Nelson's Cup, all the boats are loaded with rock stars. Top navigators, top sailors, right, left, and centre. So I think the bringing the Maxes to the Nelson's Cup was fantastic, both for the Rourke and for the Maxes. And I think, we learn a few things. We need to change a few things, but it went extremely well. And I think so much time in the Med, we're waiting for wind because there's not enough wind, or then because a lot of them don't reef, there's too much wind. And here we were geared up, and we had, gusting 22, 23 knots perhaps, some days, big seas. And one of the reasons why the hundreds did better in a way against there was only one of the 72s there. They handled those big seas pretty well, but it is spectacular seeing these boats sort of leaping. You've got a 100-foot boat and you've got about 30 foot of it out of the water, going through the waves off there, because it gets pretty rough.
And T-shirt sailing too. I mean, okay, people have got modern gear on, but man, it's what conditions? It's fabulous warm conditions. Julie, get your jet ready. We're all going to go to the Caribbean 600 next year on your jet.
That's what they all say.
Yeah, that's what we're going to do. Now let's go to another gentleman. That, of course, is Juan Vila, the famously good Spanish sailor / navigator. And often is Lucky's navigator. Some would say is the best active. I mean, standstill sailing and is a superb navigator, and there's a few others, but he is unbelievably good. And according to your PR, your website, Andrew, the Rourke's website, quite surprisingly, this was Juan Vila's first RORC Caribbean 600, which he wins. Lucky's navigator is one of a very small number of sailors that has won the America's Cup, the Volvo, and the Trophy Jules Verne. The RORC Caribbean 600 is amazing, he said. This is a quote from Juan. For navigators, it's nonstop, one thing after another, no time to relax. It's all about the next move, the next challenge, avoiding rocks, managing wind shadows, and reacting to changing conditions, commented Juan Vila. Andrew.
Yeah, I mean, it's a fantastic race. I claim a bit of responsibility for getting it off the ground, and I did the first one, and I've done 8 overall. And it's a fascinating race. There have been a couple where the reliable trade winds haven't happened, and we had very little wind. But normally, you can rely on it being the sort of 15 to 20 knot easterlies. It was interesting this year. The wind tracked right and went quite south, and that meant that a lot of the legs that used to be beats weren't beats, but the most difficult leg down behind Guadeloupe, it meant that wind shadow swung along the island more, which made it really a very difficult block to get through. And every year, people try going in, people try going out. To get away from the wind shadow, you have to go about 14 miles off, and that's impossible. But it's a very tall chunk of volcano there.
Well, I've got a video. You two would think poorly of me if I didn't. So here is the video, the rap video from.
I think the pre-start video was very good, and
this is Lucky's race, and really a bit of a not an ode, but a video ode to Lucky.
These are very fast boats against us, and you've got to get so many things right. The ley lines right, you've got to get shifts right in order for that to work, and to end up just ahead at the finish was exciting to us. This is our 4th time doing it, and we've always enjoyed the ability to race a good race until you get to Guadeloupe. Of course, when you're in the lead, as we were this time to get there, you go first. So you become the guinea pig. People see where you go. We saw today that Leopard went a little bit further out because I think they saw that we looked like we were in trouble there. But we were able to catch breeze after only a limited time of very slow speeds and get out of there at the right time. It was very close racing all the way. You have to perform at a very high level. The crew did and won in navigation. It all came together for us. We're happy to be line honors with Lucky.
Well, the Royal Caribbean 600 is amazing. It's a course for us navigators. It's basically non-stop. It's one thing after another. There's not a single minute of relaxation, of chilling out. It's just making sure that the boat doesn't hit any rock, just trying to go as close as possible to the headlands, to the turning mark, the lee side of the islands, the wind shadows. So all these ingredients make, especially for navigator, and for everyone actually in the crew, because there's a lot of maneuvers, a lot of sail changes as well, makes pretty much working all the time, non-stop.
We have a performance characteristic when we start to reach or run that allows us to get up on our chine and move quite quickly with the triple heading. It's really hard to beat us if the wind is up. If the wind is light, then we would have been beaten. But thankfully, Antigua brought us great winds. Leopard is a great competitor. We've raced against her all the way back from when I had a TP52. In fact, we were tied up next to her looking like a dinghy. So I've always admired that Leopard program. It's done so many great things over so many years. Honestly, when I ever leave the dock, I don't think we'd come ahead of Leopard in a line honors duel. And it was a great duel. So we congratulate them on a great effort We love the competition. We aren't always going to come out on top. They aren't always going to come out on top, and that's what we love about sailing.
Nice video. Nice stuff, Andrew.
I think, yeah, terrific. I think all the videos that team have produced have been excellent. I think Brian, I'm really pleased for Brian. He's a fantastic guy, and he's so well organised. It's very brave to call your boat lucky, I always thought, and it changed from Rambler 88. And well, there was a bit of a warning story, and that was that he won the joint New York Rourke Squadron west to east transatlantic race.
Yep.
And he won that, and then set off on the Fastnet and parked. This was the TP52, and parked it on the shingle bank just going out of the Solent. So he's not always lucky. But you can see the program is immaculate. The team are extremely well seasoned individuals, and it's nice. He's kept the records going. I report back to George David always when he's done well and got another record or another good result. So no, I think he's a fantastic influence on the sport.
Okay, well, let's look at then the overall winner, uncorrected. This is a boat called Choose. Cheers. Julia, you know what choose means.
Yes. Cheers.
You're late. You're late. It means goodbye.
Yeah.
Not cheers like drinking, but it means choose. In fact, in northern Germany, they say juicy. Choose.
I thought it meant. Christian told me it was a kiss.
Well, that's why it is kisses goodbye. Choose, but it's used especially in northern Germany. I think all over Germany. It's like bye. Kisses goodbye. Kisses. Choose. Kisses.
Anyway.
Choose 2 wins the RORC Caribbean 600 overall. The Royal Ocean Racing Club is delighted to announce, I think this just came out today, that the Volvo 70 Choose 2, it's an American boat owned by Christian Zugel and co-skippered by Johnny Mordaunt, as the overall winner of the 2025 Rourke 600. There they are with the trophy. There is their boat. And for any boat racing under IRC, the Americans should take note of that. In the RORC Caribbean 600, to win the race overall, you must first obviously win your class. If that is achieved, then you can focus or switch to the overall ranking in the RORC Caribbean 600 trophy. Quote, we concentrated on boats in our class, but sometimes we looked over our shoulder at other classes, especially the aforementioned Ran that we talked about. Mm-hmm. And how do you say this? Daguet? Commented Zugel.
No T. You don't. The T is silent.
Daguet.
Yeah.
Julia, you're the Francophone. You're supposed to get these things right. And correct me when I'm wrong. Mr. Doctor, he shouldn't have to do that.
I know, but it's hard to get in between you guys,
Next time I'm going to move you in the middle here on this slide. Daguet.
And it's Ron, not Ran.
Ron?
Yeah, Ran.
Looks like Ran to me. Man, it's
got an accent on it.
You guys are really tough on my ego. But it was a battle to the finish, which was pretty tense for us because they could still beat us. When Ron caught a good shift and was gaining pace, the nervousness in our crew was unbelievable. However, once they crossed the finish line, we knew we had it, much to our great relief and lots of joy. There is the crew. Bravo Zulu to them all. There are the crew names: Christian Zugel, Sonia Zugel. Is that his wife?
Yep.
Sonia Zugel, Johnny Mordaunt, who's the co-skipper, Al Frazier, Alex Higbee, again, great names here, Andrew McLean, Campbell Field, another great navigator, sailor, Christopher Welch, Jean Guilfoyle, Edward Myers, Frederick Shanks, Luke Mueller, Neil McDonald, Pete Cummings, Simon Johnson, Stefano Nava, and Stu Bannatyne. Great names, Andrew.
Yeah, I mean, you've got Pete, who's on everything, Stu Bannatyne, who's a fantastic guy. I mean, they're all good names. I think it was lovely because I saw him in for the transatlantic, which he also won on corrected time. So to win these two real, best races, some of the best races we do, to win both of them in one go, I mean, the guy's got to be very happy.
Well, I can tell you who's happy is Claire.
Yeah.
Because they're both New York Yacht Club boats, New York Yacht Club members. And Bravo Zulu 2. It was also Christian's first Rourke Caribbean 600, but it certainly will not be his last. He said that the C600 is clearly an amazing race. You read about it, you hear about it. It's in the Caribbean with beautiful islands and great trade winds. I think it is a must on every sailor's list. It is an incredible race, and I can only recommend it to anybody out there in the sailing world to do it at least once. And then I skip down to the bottom. The next big race for Christian's Volvo 70 Juice 2 will be the West to East Transatlantic race organized by New York Yacht Club and the Rourke. The race starts from Newport on the 18th June and will finish in the Cowes Isle of Wight. The gentleman went on to say many nice things about him and the clubs, and how excited he is to be sailing against other boats in the IRC Super Zero, including Leopard, Pyewacket, Lucky. How do you say it? Aeolus? Aeolus? Iolus, and Baltazar, just to name a few. We knew it would be a real battle just to win the class, and that every second would count. Their skipper, co-skipper, you must know, Johnny Mordaunt well, Andrew.
Yeah, he's an Irishman. I think it's, Brian Earhart's a member of the IMA. I've tried to persuade Christian to become a member, but he says he doesn't really think his boat's a maxi. But it is 70 foot, and we start at 60 foot. And I think the other thing you could say, isn't it amazing that you've got all those old Volvo boats in this race? So they've almost got their own class. So Iolus, Pyewacket, I Love Poland, CC, they're all Volvo boats. Those boats were built really well to go around the world, and they're still going well.
Andrew, I wonder if there's something to be said for yacht races which have boats, produce boats, that then have an afterlife.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly, yeah.
We have an afterlife when the Cup was in 12s.
Yeah.
Even there's some IACC boats still sailing around, but not so much the current Cup class, but we shall see. Here's the video.
So the final couple of hours, everybody is extremely tired. I don't think we even spoke for 30 minutes. We were just literally sitting there hoping that it's over soon. And you just sort of see Antigua, you know where you're going, but it's still distance and miles away and beating into the waves. And then slowly but surely, as you get closer and closer to the finish, you begin to relax. Chatter starts, laughter starts. You're not quite high-fiving yet, but you are definitely feeling that everybody's beginning to relax. The emotions overwhelm you. You're so excited, you're tired, you're happy. All of it flows together, but only on the last couple of miles. This was an extremely competitive race. We had 11 entries in our class, and there were amazing boats. Leopard, Lucky, Pyewacket, Aeolus, Baltazar, just to name a few. And we knew it will be a real battle. We knew Lucky and Leopard would race ahead, but they have a very tough handicap to overcome. So once we sort of knew we had IRC Super 01, we said, let's focus on who is behind us. Do we have a good chance against them or not? And we kept following their battle very, very closely. And it was between Daggett and Rahn. We actually all were so tense that we went to a bar and literally had 3 laptops open and kept track of every marker. Then at the end, Rahn caught a right shift, a big right-hander, and which allowed them to not only pass Daggett, but also start eating into our time. And the nervousness on our crew was unbelievable. But then once they crossed the finish line, we knew we had it. It was obviously great relief and lots of joy.
This is massive. Winning the Rourke 600 for me is a pinnacle. Got these top end boats that were chipping at us the whole time, and when we finally figured it out yesterday afternoon, the roars and shouts from the lads and that was just phenomenal. Like the individuals come together as a team, and for me it's like that's the most important aspect of it. Yes, we're mates, but kind of pulling in the same direction, and we talk a lot. You know, every maneuver was talked through. We passed a comment as well, like the lads start talking about one particular maneuver with 30 minutes before the maneuver was going to happen, let's say, and they used up that 30 minutes, and you just keep learning. I'm still learning, you know, sailing with these guys.
It was quite the journey, and it is an amazing race, and I can only recommend it to anybody out there in the sailing world to do it at least once. So I think winning a race like this really starts with having a competitive boat, having a well-prepared boat, and having an amazing crew. And I think that's part of the ingredients. If you want to be competitive in these races, you got to have all three. I'm lucky we have all three.
Nice sentiment. Nice video. Really nice videos, Andrew.
Yes.
Tell Louis and the gang congratulations for us, would you please?
Yeah, it's actually one of the main team for that is Eddie Wardenau and son Miles. So it's nice that's keeping things going, because Eddie was very much involved when we started this race. But I think my money would have been on Balthazar, because if you look back through the records, Maxi 72s have won it more often than not, and they were close. But to take a relatively, I mean that Volvo 70, yeah, sure, it's been worked on and looked after well, but it's not been pimped the way Pyewacket has, the bigger rig and everything. So you know, they did it incredibly well. It was an exciting race because it was pretty open right to the end.
Let's talk about your club, shall we? We had this shot on Tuesday's show, and we talked about this beautiful clubhouse that you've modified, upgraded at Cowes on the Isle of Wight. On the parade, the RORC club, the Cowes Clubhouse, and I ran the video. I won't do it again today, but if any of you want to go back to our Tuesday show and see what a fabulous facility and what a great promo video. But we've been talking with Andrew about downtown in St. James's Place, 20 St. James Place, the London Clubhouse. How old is that building, that clubhouse there? Do you know, Andrew?
Yeah, it's Georgian. It dates, it's what, 200 years old. So it's quite dangerous when you start pulling it apart that you find. And it's a constant work of love and expense to keep it going. So it's actually two houses knocked together.
Yeah, right on the backside of Green Park. And I used to walk home through Green Park back to when I was staying at the Royal Thames during IWRU week. But look at this great shot. This is what we really want to talk about now. And Julia, you know what that is. That is the Admiral's Cup, arguably the most famous yacht racing trophy, aside from the America's Cup, certainly among the very famous trophies. Competed from 1957 through 93. And then what happened, Andrew?
Yeah, in fact, through to 2003.
Yeah, 03.
This design's a bit strange. It sort of zigzags back and forth. So 2003 is when it ended up in Australia, and then we virtually had to sue them to get it back. And it came back rather bent. But I tell you what, if you look back at 2003, you'll see that every team event collapsed. So the Kenwood Cup, the Sardinia Cup, the whole works all collapsed about the same time.
Why?
And well, partly financial, partly the transition. I think we were in the transition where there was a lot more pro sailors. If you go back to the early days, there would be very, very few pro sailors, and it was a bunch of friends. Three of them would get together, but it was really competitive. I mean, in some years there'd be 18 boats trying to get into the British team, and people were building new boats like crazy. I mean, it was just that was a time. It then got when national authorities got involved and started selecting the team, and the same thing happened with the supposedly amateur Commodore's Cup. Is you got put in a team with somebody you didn't particularly want to be in a team with or didn't think were as good. And as the expenses rack up and people it costs more and more money. You don't want to build a boat and then be put in a team when you know you're going to lose. So I think the altruism of being in a team went to pieces, and also the expense of shipping boats down to Australia has just it's gone into orbit now. So funnily enough, I mean, there's probably more money at the top end of sailing because there are more when you look at the maxis, but at this sort of size, it's dropped off quite badly. So we looked at this really carefully. Well, in 2008, we went round, and at that time, it looked feasible almost to have teams where we'd have a TP52 and perhaps a Maxi 72 when they were offshore friendly, and we would try and relaunch an Admiral's Cup around that size. And at that point,
with two boat teams.
Yeah, there was a financial crash, and everybody who said they'd come suddenly pulled their horns in and said, no, I don't think it'll work. So we sort of gave up, because when we were thinking about it then, and equally now, what we really didn't want to do was to run an event once and then find nobody came the second time, and it was just a flash in the pan.
So what's the program? I've got the program here. We didn't have time to show you this slide, but this is your program this year. Teams of 2 boats may enter representing a club or country. There will be no limitation on professional crew or crew nationality. There will be 2 classes with teams having 1 boat in each class, starting Thursday the 17th with registration, measurement, so on, through to Friday 1 August. So it's 2 weeks' time, through to the prize giving on the 1st of August. And it's being held, of course, in your centenary year, the 100th anniversary of the Rourke.
Yeah. Well, I think, just to go through a whole lot of things there, remember in the old days, it went on for much longer.
Yeah.
Getting people to have the time off if they're amateur, or if you've got to pay them, the professionals, it was very important, we thought, to compress it. But we still wanted to have a large offshore element. So we will start with an offshore race, a short offshore race. Then we'll go to the inshore races for 3 days. We've got some spare days either side of that for the weather. And then, of course, the most fundamental thing is the Fastnet. And another reason why the event failed probably was when they chose the Mum 36s, and people said, hang on, we're not taking these crazy boats around the Fastnet Rock. So they moved them to just go around the Wolf Rock. And it sort of knocked a lot of the history and the fascination out of it. So it was fundamental, we thought, that we needed to go back to the original formula, which was a channel race and a Fastnet race and the inshore racing. So we'll have a good mix. So you've got to have an all-round boat and an all-round team to win this. It's been fascinating to see how many teams have really thrown a lot at this and really worked out what the best combination of boats will be. And we've got teams where the same guy even owns both the boats. We've got other people who decided to do it, and then they're sort of searching for a partner. And that's why, although there are 15 teams at the moment, I think that there's certainly I know of one more that's definitely coming, which is a mixed nationality team. And I think they haven't announced in public, so I'm probably not. It's beyond the one here, as I know exactly who they are. But I'm not going to. I'm going to let them blow their own trumpets. But that will be a very good team. Some very good people, and I think this will be a very high quality event. Even if you say there weren't as many teams and there are only 2 boats, not 3, it will be a very good event. The nationality thing, I'll tell you exactly why. And Rob Whelan worked this out. If you look at the TP52s, the average number of nationalities on those boats is 5.5. And you talk to Nicholas Zenstrom, he doesn't want to sail with an all Swedish team because he wants to sail with the crew he's been sailing with for the last 15, 20 years, none of whom are Swedish except him. So we'll stick the flag on the owner, which in some cases that it'll be 2 different nationalities, and so that's why we stuck it on clubs rather than nationality, but we'll try and steer it towards nationality as well. It also meant that we could get rid of the potential snags of member national authorities wanting to take over the team selection, because that's something that really was a massive discouragement. There are some other things in here we've insisted on having on every boat there's got to be somebody under 27 and a female. We've had a bit of kickback on that, but not much. It's slightly tokenism, but it's a start. And this will evolve. We may change things. Hopefully this will grow. We will do the next event. We've decided the next event will be again in the Solent and the Fastnet, but above and beyond that, depending on who wins and getting feedback from the teams, then we may well move it to other areas. One side note, actually, that another reason I've been speaking to Yacht Club Costa Smeralda is that they're very keen to use the same format in terms of classes, not quite the same racing, but run the Sardinia Cup again. And so it'll be good because people will build. You don't want to build a boat.
They can do both. They can do the Admiral's Cup and Sardinia Cup.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they'll do Sardinia Cup alternate, because this is an alternate year event.
Yep.
So they'll do the Admiral's Cup this year, Sardinia Cup next year, Admiral's Cup year. So there's a bit more. It's worth building a boat for more than one event, and obviously we'll stick to IRC for this. I don't want to get into lots of argument about rating systems at this stage, but that is our rating system, so we'll obviously use it. And what it encourages, you don't build a boat that's only going to be good in light weather or only good in inshore, because this competition you've got to cover the lot. So it makes a lot of sense to have an all-round boat.
Andrew, that's one of the questions here in the chat. In fact, there's a bunch of questions that Julia likes to remind us to go back and read the questions. But Steve Gruber's asking, is there still a scoring bias for the longer races?
Yeah, we argued about that back and forth a long time. I'm trying to think exactly what the coefficient is. And sorry, I'd have to dig out the notes to race. I can't answer that one. I should be able to answer it, but we argued so much about how much and whether that I've actually forgotten exactly what we landed on at the end. But you can look it up on the website. It's in the, if you look at there's a separate website outside of the overall Rourke website just for the Admiral's Cup.
Andrew, I had you promoted as in the show promo slide, excuse me, as the chair of the advisory committee. That committee now, which involved Dee Kafari and Stan Honey, I can't remember who all. You put the notice of race together, right? Now you've got an organizing committee on which you are a member.
Yeah, that's how it worked, and that was a fascinating committee because we had people from all over the world. We managed to work out that about 8 o'clock in the evening in the UK worked all right for Stan on the West Coast and our Australian contributors in the early morning for them. Stan actually has made a really fundamental change, which is fundamental to the whole of the Rourke program. And as usual, Stan, when I first looked at it, when he first suggested it, I thought, no, this seems a bit crazy. But you argue against Stan is never a very good idea.
Yes, right.
Because he's about the brightest guy I know. And so he said that using the coal regs, the international rules for preventing collisions at sea, which is the standard rule for all shipping, doesn't work at all well at night for yachts, especially if you've got a bunch of yachts arriving at a buoy in the middle of the night together. So there's an alternative which World Sailing put together, which is the reduced visibility rule. And that is now going to be used as the nighttime rule for all Rourke races. The other problem we had with a lot of things was that we have a notice of race for the Fastnet and a notice of race for the Admiral's Cup. And there were a lot of things we would have liked to restrict and tighten up. But these boats are also fighting for the overall Fastnet prizes. So we had to try and align those two things, although we'll set them off on the start line together, not with the rest of the fleet. So there's a bit of a differential there. But overall, we've aligned all the things that the main Rourke fleet, which, as you know, is going to be 450 boats. These guys have got to be able to be eligible for the Rourke prizes as well as the Admiral's Cup.
Well, Steve Gruber is saying the brightest guy that Mr. Doctor knows. That's saying something.
That's true.
And hello to Ken Saban checking in from the western end of Lake Erie. And Clark Chapin says, as always, Stan Honey is 2 steps ahead of everyone else. Bravo Zulu to him. I've got a quick video of this. Well, this is a very special Fastnet race. It's always special, but this year is particularly. Let's show the video and then come back out and tell us why this race is going to be so cool, Andrew. The race of the century.
Yes.
The world's largest offshore race. I guess you wouldn't use that lightly if it were not true.
Yeah, I think it's by a margin as well. I mean, there were days when there were 300 boats in the Sydney Hobart, but it's now become much smaller due to qualification insurance, difficulties getting boats there. And they rarely top 100 now. So yeah, I think, Newport, Bermuda isn't anywhere as big as that. We are very lucky. There's a spectrum of people. There's the guys who want to win it. There's a lot of people who just want to tick it off and say they've done it. The bucket list people, a lot of pay and play type boats. So there's a whole range, and then of course we've got the Amoccas and the multi-hulls, a fantastic range of boats. So it is fantastic, and I think in a way having it every 2 years is good because you just get this big build-up.
And it's of course the conclusion to this year's revived. Since what was the last one? 2003, Admiral's Cup.
Yeah. So it's the revived Admiral's Cup.
22 years ago. That's a long. So there was what was the Vice Admiral's Cup, and is that still going on?
Yeah, that's still going on, and that's sort of it started as it was actually Peter and Louise Morton who got it going, associated when it was still the Royal Corinthian. It wasn't a Rourke thing, and then of course when that building that you showed earlier, it used to be the Royal Corinthian Yacht Club, and we had a merger, and so we're now the Rourke. And I think they set that up as a sort of initially an amateur version of the Admiral's Cup, but only for inshore. It just a 3-4 day regatta, and it was initially the quarter tonners, and then some of the other one design of things like J109s. And it carries on that basis.
Okay, well, it is your 100th anniversary. It's a big deal. Anything else that the club is doing that we should know about?
We're having a big dinner before the Admiral's Cup, bringing back all the great and good. We actually had a dinner with the Princess Royal, that was pre the 50th. The last Fastnet was actually the 50th Fastnet. and this is the 51st Fastnet, but there's all sorts of reasons. But this is 100 years because the club was started in 1925. They sat down after doing the first Fastnet race at the Royal Western Yacht Club down in Plymouth and said, "Why don't we form a club?" And called it the Ocean Racing Club, and it got royal assent a bit later.
Okay, well, it's a great year for a number of clubs, including and especially the Rourke. Andrew, it's late there.
Royal Thames got their 250th, so it's a very busy year for us Brits.
The Thames 250th this year?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Well, plus Chicago Yacht Club's 100 and their sesquicentennial, and a number of other clubs. We got your club, Julia, is coming up on its 100th.
Yes.
In a couple of years' time. It's getting late in London. It's 23:05. You did get a second glass of wine during the show, didn't you, Andrew?
I did. Yeah. Well, I'm slightly jet lagged at the moment. I don't know what time of day it is because I only came back to England on Wednesday.
Well, it was mostly north-south, though.
What? No, Antigua.
Well, what is it? It's only 3 or 4.
It's 4 hours.
Well, come on.
I know it's nothing. It's nothing like going to San Francisco.
Yeah, it's nothing like when you come over here. And I'm wearing this Stag Crew shirt in your honor. You had that nice picture the other day. Julia has a question to wrap this up.
I wore it proudly at the opening party of the 600.
Yeah, we saw that. And you sent a picture. I used that on the show on Tuesday, I think.
Yeah.
Julia, you have a wrap. The final question.
It's a bit chilly for it here today.
But Claire Harrington wants to know if you're going to be at the New York Yacht Club for the Rourke meeting in March.
No, awfully sadly, I'd already booked. They only told me about that very late, and I was already committed to a meeting in Europe that I'm at an annual vascular surgery ski meeting that I go to every year.
I think that's lovely.
That sounds important.
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Doctor, thank you very much indeed. We really appreciate your coming on. We're going to wrap the show up with the D block, but let you go unless you want to. You're welcome to stay, but as I said, it is getting late now. And Claire Harrington says, "I'll miss you."
No, likewise. I'm really sorry not to come. I'll try and find another excuse to come either to Harbour Court or to 44th Street. But sadly, I won't make this one.
Okay. Well, thank you for making this one. It's been great to have you on again. Yes. And we'll do it again soon, hopefully sooner than later. And thank God it's talking about yacht racing and not about COVID.
Well, Clark says I've been on 16 times, which is quite scary. I know I'm getting old. But it's very good to see you all. Thank you very much.
Yes. Always great stories.
See you soon.
Okay. Andrew, thanks. Thanks very much. See you soon. Mr. Dr. Andrew McIrvine, who was our guest there, as you all, 16 times, did he say? Is that what Clark was saying? Clark keeps track of that. Alistair Murray and many other people saying great to see him. And thank you, Andrew, for coming on. He is, of course, the Secretary General of the International Maxi Association. He's an admiral, a former admiral of the Royal Ocean Racing Club, a member of the Royal Yacht Squadron, and a member, Julia, of the Commodore of the club of which you are Commodore.
Yes, the Beach Street Yacht Club.
The Beach Street Yacht Club.
Yes.
Maybe not the most important club, but maybe the most fun. Although we haven't had a meeting in a while. Okay.
We should arrange an anniversary for April Fool's Day.
April Fool's Day.
Yeah.
We're almost on our 10th anniversary. Next year is our 10th anniversary, 2026. Chris, actually, always great to have Mr. Doctor on the show, so informed and so willing to share. Yeah, J. Frederick Bland, who's down in Texas where there's this big measles outbreak, he said, you could have asked him about MMR vaccines and measles, but I thought we wouldn't get into vaccines and politics any more than we already did today. Julia?
Yes?
Let's move smartly forward here and ask you what's going on today, the 28th of February, this day in history.
In history, I don't know.
1849.
Gold was discovered in California.
Close, but no cigar. Try again. Here's your clue.
That's gold.
That's gold. And you know where that is arguably, I don't know if it was the very first piece of gold, but it was one of the first pieces of gold. And apparently that piece of gold made its way to Washington, D.C. and is in the Smithsonian Institute.
Mm.
Is that what it's called? Smithsonian Institute Museum? The Smithsonian. And it's among the first pieces. The guy who was trying to keep it secret because he was this guy, Sutter Mill guy, because he was trying to get a hold of the title, the claim. And he could, he got into San Francisco and got drunk and told everybody. And then he sent this piece. You know how they got that piece to Washington, D.C.?
Out of the river.
Well, they brought it down here to San Francisco. But do you think it went by ship around the Cape? Do you think it went by, there was no train across country. Do you think they took it by wagon? No, they took it to Panama, crossed Panama, and then got on another ship which went to the East Coast. That's how they got from San Francisco in the clipper ship days before.
That's correct.
Thank you. You don't remember, though, that.
I was there.
You were? Okay. Well, speaking of clipper ships, on this day in history, here's what really happened. The U.S. Pacific mail ship California, which was built on the East Coast, sent around the Cape, and then ran from Panama up here, stopping in some places maybe like San Diego and Monterey and here. And that SS California, the first ship of the Pacific Mail Steamship Company, this ship was used between Panama and San Francisco between 1848 and 1894 when she was wrecked off the coast of Peru. Not by your late great husband, who was
not there yet.
He was a few months, years, a half of a century after that, but he was a ship captain. But on the 28th of Feb 1849, the first boatload of gold rush prospectors, also known, of course, as 49ers, which is now the San Francisco's football team is known as the 49ers, arrived in San Francisco. The discovery of gold in California in 1848 had triggered the California gold rush, a massive migration to the state, and here is the video.
On the 28th of February 1849, the first boatload of gold rush prospectors, known as the 49ers, arrived in San Francisco. Welcome to History Pod. James W. Marshall had discovered gold at Sutter's Mill in Coloma, California on January the 28th, 1848. This discovery triggered a frenzied quest for riches known as the California Gold Rush, and which reshaped the American West. As the news of the gold spread, the first wave of fortune seekers, famously known as the 49ers, set their sights on San Francisco. SS California, a steamship that had been built to provide mail, passenger and freight services to and from San Francisco and Oregon, departed New York in October. News of the Californian gold only became widely known in December, so while the ship navigated the Straits of Magellan, hundreds of people rushed to Panama to board her before she continued up the coast to San Francisco. On February the 28th, 1849, SS California steamed into San Francisco, carrying around 400 passengers seeking their fortune. As these 49ers disembarked, it began a surge in population that strained the city's resources. Before long, San Francisco, which had once been a modest Mexican trading post, was transformed by tents and makeshift structures that had been hastily erected by those hoping to capitalize on the needs of the arriving gold seekers. San Francisco's population, which had been around 1,000 in 1848, consequently skyrocketed to tens of thousands within a year. This sudden influx led to a frenetic pace of urban development, and the city hastily adapted to accommodate the needs of its burgeoning population. The impact of the SS California's arrival was therefore profound, setting the stage for a dynamic period in California's history, sparked by the discovery of gold in the hills of Coloma.
Julia, is that why you came to San Francisco? Were you looking for gold?
Oh, yes.
What year did you were born down the coast, but when did you end up in San Francisco?
Well, at Stanford.
65-ish, or?
At Stanford, it was 56.
Oh, you were at Stanford before that, so down the peninsula. But when did you end up moving here and living here? And you've been living here ever since, right? 60-something?
later. It was in the late 77.
Oh, late 70s. Well, that's fairly recent. That's only yesterday. But it's hard to believe that this madness was going on here in 1849, 2 years before the America's Cup.
Yep.
Started in 1851.
So wonderful history.
And as Gruber says, Steve is saying, keep it secret. I heard there was gold just laying on the ground at first, and apparently that's why everybody got so excited, because there was so much gold in that. I mean, you didn't have to go digging for it. It was right there in the river, the American River, and whatever those other rivers were. And there was lots of it. In fact, when I was putting this together last night, something like, according to several different sites, something like $2 billion in those days, which is, that'd be way more than that obviously today. $2 billion worth of gold was taken out of here in just the 4 or 5, 6 years of the gold rush.
Yeah,
$2 billion in $1850.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh, amazing.
Yeah. I still look at it, because there was a gold mine right behind our Calistoga property.
How about right down here in the backyard? We should be down here checking in the backyard to see if there's any gold, Julia.
Yeah, better
here at Beach Street Yacht Club.
Yeah, I'm sure.
But you're already doing very well, so we don't have to do that. So that's what happened. And it was the clipper ships that was sailing that got that crowd here. And the first boat apparently landed on the 28th of February, 1849, 2 years before the start of AC 0, the America's Cup 0, which gets us to the D block, and it gets us to the last leg. And we have a Pedro's personal perspective with the help of John Emmett for today's final leg. There is, I got an intro. It's been a while. Pedro's personal perspective. And there is his picture, and there is the video.
Morning, Tom, Julia, and all the FOSI. This is another Pedro Personal Perspective. I'm here today with, guess who, that famous John Emmett. And he's going to teach me how to rig and sail a 4.7. I've sailed for a long time, but this is the first time I've ever sailed a 4.7. So, John, if you wouldn't mind explaining to us and my glamours here how we basically rig, sail and use a 4.7.
Okay, well, morning. This is going to be fairly quick because I've literally just rocked up at the sailing club and my cover is still firmly on my boat. It's morning here, Australia, and I think my start time is under 90 minutes. The big problem with the Ilka 4 is it's effectively a very small rig for the same size of hull. And that means in the very light conditions it's a bit sticky, but it opens a window for all those 50 to 60 kilo sailors, whether that's 15-year-olds or 50-year-olds, to get on the water. And today I'm not going to give the commentator's curse, which is what they did yesterday when they said I'm sure we're going to go sailing, but today it does look pretty hopeful, just looking at the conditions we have here. First tip, I've got a borrowed boat and it's missing the centreboard trailing corner. So this is where you put the board in there, the board hits the back and it breaks off. So you always put your foil in there, because foils are expensive and that is really difficult to repair. But fundamentally it's the same as any boat. We're looking for deck plating, which means in a single hander you're putting the boom, or rather the sail, as close to the deck as you can. And that means this wants to be as tight as it can. These blocks are kissing. The traveller wants to be as tight as it can. This is not a good traveller. You need to have a half hitch there, otherwise you pull it tight and this just moves. But basically you're looking at that boom over the back quarter, unless it's very windy and you're having to sheet out because you're overpowered, or it's very light and you're looking very underpowered and you're just trying to reduce drag. And then this setting we call two block or block to block, where you're just taking the slack out. You progressively depower the boat, so you would want to have a really flat sail before you start letting the sheet in and out. But today, I think because of the heating, everyone's teasing me, but it's pretty hot for a pom. Because of the heat, it will be quite gusty. So you need to set up for the mode wind rather than for the mean wind or the gusts or the lulls. For the For your stall, looking at taking the creases out using the downhaul canoe, what you call it in Australia. Sometimes we're separated by a common language, but because of the height of the luff, no need to rig it all down one side like I should do today in the radial. And then for the 6 and 7, because the sails will be redesigned in the next few years, but they've got quite a lot of depth in the foot for the 6 and the 7. You're normally looking at having approximately wristwatch to finger, because their foot length is so much shorter. If you look at the amount of hook you get here, actually hand width is more appropriate. And I always think this, as if by magic, works very well, because bigger sailors tend to have bigger hands. Okay, it's actually quite hard to get the rig set up completely right unless there's wind filling the sail. And then the other thing, the common misconception, is that when we're sailing downwind, we're looking at having the middle batten approximately 90 degrees, but when you let the kicker off, you have an awful lot of twist in the sail. So where the sail may be at 90 degrees at the bottom, actually the top ends up far further forward, and that's the reason sometimes you have the windward capsize. Final top tip, because actually I need to have something to eat before I go sailing, you want to make sure that all the control lines end at the bottom. So when you let all the outhaul off, or all the Cunningham off, this cleat should be with the handle in it. And the reason I say that, it's not so important with the Cunningham, although it means you end up with an awful lot of rope, and when you put it all the way on, you actually end up sat behind the boat. That's not a huge problem. If you let go of the kicker, and the kicker goes completely slack, then you've got possibility of a wind capsize. But I'm just going to say what I always say. So, you know, go out, hike hard, have fun. Every day's a learning day, and I'm quite happy to chat to people off the water. But I think that's as much as you can do in approximately 3 minutes. So hopefully that's good for you, Tom, Julia, and all the FOSI. As always, please remember to share so everyone sees the content.
John, thank you very much, mate. I appreciate it.
Okay.
And the Ilka class appreciates your input. So, catch you later on the race course.
Hey,
You're welcome. I'm going to make sure no one's got the sandwich.
Bye. Incredibly fast.
Well, there was quite a group gathered around there too, looking for these tips from John. Now, I think that was shot yesterday morning. I think on their Friday morning. It's obviously Saturday morning down there now. And this big regatta, the Sydney Harbor Regatta, is going on this weekend. That was all that activity in John's report from the Royal Sydney Yacht Squadron. Nice tips, Coach, Ed Worley is saying. Thanks for the lesson. And yeah, the 4.7 is the former radial. And you've now got the Ilka 7, 6, and 4, I think, is the shorthand. Correct me if I'm wrong. He's in his element. Yeah, he is. And a couple of you, Mark Holland and J. Frederick Bland, have told us that $1 billion in 1850 is worth $40 billion today. Right? That's $40 billion today. 462 million. Yeah, $40 billion. So that's $80 billion worth of gold was taken out of here in today's numbers. But nice stuff. Pedro's personal perspective. We're going to get some music with his little deal here for the next one. Thank you to Peter Stevenson, a.k.a. Pedro Foiling Sailor, one of our super FOSI. We appreciate him submitting that this morning for our last leg. And Julie, that gets us to your favorite segment. And the gentleman who is our cover slide. This cover slide is now one of our oldest. That goes back, 4, 5, 6 years maybe.
Oh, longer.
You didn't like my cover slide today with the briefs.
No.
The news briefs. Okay. Well, we'll see if anybody sends one. I'll bet you nobody does. The 6 is the radial, Blake Middleton is saying, not the 4. Okay, Whiskey Tango Foxtrot. Now, I got this morning. I don't know which of you Brits is sending this. It's from country code 44 plus 44. But I got a text this morning and I panicked. It says, please pay your fast track lane tolls by yesterday, the 27th, to avoid a fine and to keep your driver's license. You can pay at, and there is the website. Please reply with a Y for yes, then exit the in any event. That was to go I keep your driver's license. I got that text just before we went to air, or as I was in the last half an hour or so, and I panicked and thought, God, which fast track's how you get across, you know, with the little box that gets you across without stopping. In fact, they didn't stop you. I'll take a picture of your license plate and send you a bill later on.
Right.
But if you forget, you get some kind of a message like this in the mail with a penalty, with an increased number.
Right.
So you don't want to miss your going across one of the bridges here, or on the what's the lane called? The HOV, the high occupancy vehicle lanes, where they sometimes charge you. It's a scam, you think? Another fast track scam, like the Medicare scams, but that was Whiskey Tango Foxtrot. I thought it opened with that today. But somebody in the UK is sending this out. Country code 44 is the mobile number from whence it came, a classic phishing scam. This is this is a sign of the times, another sign of the times. Alexa, Siri, could have been, did Ralph work out and eat a salad? No, Ralph watched TV the entire day, then ordered a large cheeseburger, fries, and a milkshake, Julia.
Yes.
Huh? That came from Greg Phillips. Greg's been sending me a lot of good ones lately. Now, all this talk about the Gulf of America, guess who sent that?
Guess who?
Pindar sent that one. He's going to call it the Gulf of Yorkshire instead of the North Sea.
Yes.
Huh?
Right.
Groover says he owes so many tolls in so many countries he's never been to. He doesn't know what to do. Didn't you get a scam just before today, before we went to air?
Yeah.
You told me when you got down here somebody had $40 million or something.
Yeah. No. They discovered that I had $40 million in escrow for me, and that I'd had.
Fill in your bank information here and we'll send it to you. Yeah, right. The Gulf of Yorkshire, Pindar thinks that's what he's going to rename that. Then, this has come through from a number of you. The Pacific Ocean is getting renamed, according to Clark Chapin and others, the Gulf of Australia. I saw that online.
That's lovely.
That's terrific. But one more from this genre. This is just been discovered, a new species of fish in the Gulf of America. Guess who sent that? It's clean.
Yes, it is.
Ted Ryman sent that. And then there's this one, my last boat, 7. He's had 7 last boats apparently seen on the expressway, seen on the highway, and that was sent by Ed Worley. And finally a caption, well, not quite finally, but a caption contest. This poor kid doesn't have a bailing bucket for their Opti, but that could be a caption contest. And that also sent through by Greg Phillips in Australia. Julia, I had to ask the gang today, who sent this to me. I couldn't remember because it was on my phone. And the secret to a happy life is to drink good whiskey and to avoid talking to, and then I changed it from morons to croutons. That's pretty good, isn't it?
That is good.
Look at I found a typeface that was pretty close.
That's good.
And then came through, quote, or rum if the whiskey has run dry. That from Christopher Gillingham in Leamington. Thank you, Christopher, for that one. Now, I spelled whiskey with the E. And then I said, God, I can't remember, because I'm not a big whiskey person, but I can't remember it's spelled with an E or not, if it's just W-H-I-S-K-Y. And what, Madam Grammarian, is the answer?
E.
No.
Really?
Really. And I had to go look it up. Since this is the drinking show with a sailing habit, both whiskey and whiskey are correct spellings of the word for the liquor. The difference depends on the country of origin. Whiskey with an E is used in the States and Ireland. The plural is whiskies, like car keys. The spelling is likely due to the large number of Irish immigrants who brought their stills to the United States. My Uncle Phil has a still, Bill has a still on the hill. My mother used to sing that. Where he runs off a gallon or two. Whiskey without an E, used in Scotland, Canada, and many other countries. The plural is whiskies, looks like whiskers. The spelling comes from the original Scots and Gaelic words. Now, do you know how to pronounce that?
Never.
Which means water of life. Remember Gordon Smith had that for us at the top of the show? Well, I had to go look it up.
Right.
because the water of life and those Scots and Gaelic words are pronounced Ishka Baha. Ishka Baha. It doesn't look like that at all. It looks like Usaga Beatha, but it's pronounced properly Ishka Baha. I found that online, so it must be true.
must be true.
But there's these nice sites where you can type stuff in and say, how do you pronounce?
Right.
And it comes back with I could have put the auto recording in, but I thought you'd take my word for it. It's Ishka Baha. Sounds like sheep. Yes, Dad, what is an alcoholic? Son, do you see those 4 cars? Son, do you see those 4 cars? An alcoholic would see 8. And the kid says, but Dad, there are only 2. Our drinking show with a sailing habit. And that came through from Ted Ryman, which gets us, what does it say on your shirt, Tom? Claire Harrington's wanting to know. My shirt says, Tom... Andrew says, Andrew McIrvine, he has this shirt and it says Secretary General, International Maxi Association. Mine, what's it say? Can't read it, it's backwards. Can you read it, Julia?
No. Tinsley, Scott Talent.
Tinsley's, I was the producer of the Friday Night Member Show that year called Tinsley's Got Talent, like America's Got Talent or Great Britain's Got Talent. So I guess that's what they put. I didn't even know that was on there. Oh my goodness. Okay.
Now we know.
Now we know. Tinsley's Got Talent. That was the name of the show, one of the shows I produced over the many years up there at the Stag Cruise. Then we are to the finish line, Julia. And you like to say...
Yes. Oh, we're doing really well, you guys. By following, and share, we were up 42% last week.
Yeah, we got a lot of. The show continues to grow. In fact, it's a good reason not to do anything on Thursday nights because I work on the show now from kind of 4 until 11 at night, Thursdays. Just in case I forgot what, J. Frederick Bland. I don't know if he's talking about but wait, there's more. Uh-oh, J. Frederick Bland's, but wait, there's more. That was it. I think that was it, but maybe he's got something else. Please, you can also... not only follow, and share, but comments are welcome, even in replay. And by the way, the commenting is in the YouTube, at least, algorithm. The commenting is becoming even more important.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing that is becoming important, apparently they YouTube and their algorithm electronically, and maybe Facebook too, I'm not sure, although we get many more views on Facebook, as you know. But also, I kid you not, and I'm not plugging for what will be our next slide, but apparently Patreon, patrons of YouTube video sites, YouTube channels, is a deal too for the algorithm now. They actually go in and electronically look at somebody that's got a patron or Patreon, and that boosts the thing. In case you forgot your name. The name I remember. I couldn't remember what was on there, if it said committee or it said something else. Thank you to all of you that support us. Patreon.com/join/Sailing Illustrated. Much appreciated for your support, which does not pay for food and booze. You never know.
If it only did.
If it only did. It pays for our streaming costs and beyond. Cheers, Blake Middleton. Cheers to all of you.
Still frozen.
Yeah, still frozen lakes up in Minnesota. Well, it's only, it's the last day of February.
Yes.
The last day of February. Thanks also to everybody that gave us pictures, videos, audio for today's show. Any final thoughts, Julia?
No, not really.
Okay. There are the cool people making today's show possible, and making next Tuesday's show possible will be this gentleman. Dolly DeVola will be our guest, and he will be live via Skype. I'm not sure what, with Skype shutting down, although it's going to be on for a few more weeks. He will be live from Sydney, giving us a preview of the JJ and talking about our FOSI, who is the winningest. His team, the Rag and Famish Hotel team, is the winningest team leading up to the 2025 winnings, JJ Giltonen World Trophy Championship, which takes place down there in Sydney Harbor the 7th through the 16th of March. We're looking forward to that.
That's just so much fun to watch.
And we'll have some other cool guests coming up in March. Thank you very much for joining us. Joe Holtzman's wife says it's a great show. Well, Joe, thank you very much for that. And to all of you, TFE, did you see Mr. Doctor has a Herb Alpert CD in the CD rack behind his head? No, I did not see that, but As long as it's not yacht rock, we're okay, right, Julia?
Yeah.
Thanks, everybody. Hope to see you on Tuesday. In the meantime, have a great weekend wherever in the world you are. And, of course, sail fast, sail safe, and have fun. Ciao.
Ciao.
For now.